Economics is warfare. People are not going to fight fair with you. You run around saying, well, that ain't fair, that ain't fair. Man, nobody care about that. Life ain't fair. Look throughout history. Any great nation that's ever had freedom and power had to defend that against unfairness.
Anytime you allow us to compete in a space where the rules are fixed, we're going to outwork you, outpace you, we're going to beat you, right? Because that's how we work.
I don't care about equality. There's nothing magical about white people where I want to be equal to him. I never ran a race hoping to tie the race. I want to win.
Why did you go get a master's in mathematics? When you say I'm pro-black, what does that mean? When you look at the way people criticize you, is there something that you're learning from? Are you MAGA?
Am I what?
MAGA.
MAGA? MAGA?
Yeah.
Hell no. Well, who said that? No. Don't be surprised when you're unemployed, left behind, don't get the right job, don't get the promotion, don't get the pay raise, because you ain't white. The reason the black community fails is because most of us are wired to only be black in our spare time, but we pro-white in our full time.
I know you don't believe in voting.
I don't write a black person off just because you're a Democrat or a Republican or just because you're corporate or academic. You really got some people out here that really understand and really get it. Both of my fathers were drug addicts. My biological father, I never got to know him. I kind of became this person that didn't have a lot of friends, but I didn't really want a lot of friends. I done had people try to cancel me and all that. I'm like, you don't even know. You will not cancel me. That desire to be critical, it's not me trying to be an asshole. It's just me trying to be honest.
What you do with your money says a lot about who you are.
The criticism will happen, but what? So what? Okay, what you said, it might be true, it might not. I'm not walking away from this. Barack Obama is one of the most beloved people in this country, one of the most respected humans on the planet. Half the country hates his guts. Like, it doesn't matter what he does.
We're not saying we want equality, right? We said we want higher. That would be a pro-black thing.
If you define money as evil, then you'll never have any money. You know, I'm not a capitalist. I never have been. But I'm a big believer in business ownership and free enterprise, because that's a key to power. And if power is used ethically, then you can really get some stuff done.
Things are possible if we have a belief, right? But what do we collectively believe in anymore? Peace, family. 19 Keys tapping in. Welcome to another high-level conversations. Today's guest is somebody that you may be familiar with. Before the era of, I would say, the current financial influencers and financial literacy, you have some people who have been consistent in this space. And when I think about today's conversation about credentials, right, and where we are going in the era of AI, I think it's important to have people that are credentialed, people that have titles, people that have experience, and people that have war scars, so that you can ask them the right questions and they can give you the correct answers in the correct pathway. This is somebody who, when I was on my path of early, financial literacy, as I still am and growing in my understanding, you have somebody that is there that you can go to their page and you can learn from, right? And I think that's important, especially in the tradition of seeking advice from our elders. Not that my brother is old or nothing, but he's an elder in the essence that I believe that he carries knowledge, information, and understanding, right, to a population of people that desperately need it. We are in a time where I think financial nihilism is at an all-time high, right? People are desperate. The price of things are high as hell. Most people barely can afford groceries and transportation, let alone a day out to enjoy themselves. And so giving people a structured pathway to financial freedom has always been important, right? And I think that it's important to find people who not only putting themselves out there and putting what they know, but people that have weathered the storm. The storm that comes along with the success, the storm that comes along with the criticism. Because who's left after that storm, I think, are the people that are real, right? And you find somebody that have no battle scars, it means that they haven't fought for anything that's worth fighting for. I think one of the biggest things that is worth fighting for is our people, right? Our success as a nation, as a collective. But more importantly, I think most people are suffering from a lack of money, but deeper than that, a lack of understanding money. And that lack of understanding money is also connected to the root of our insecurities. Because when we don't believe we deserve something, then we will lose what we have, no matter how we obtained it, until we change our identity and we change that belief. And what I've seen from this brother is that he has spoke upon that from a mental standpoint as well, conditioning the fertile soil before he even drops the seed. Because if the mind is not right, whatever the mind gets, it would then lose, and it won't treat that correctly. And I think that we need to sit down and have more of these conversations so that we can get guidance and we can take accountability for our own communities, and we can have more economic development. But I also wanted to sit down with somebody who I think has an interesting perspective on the current landscape, right? Politically, culturally, socially, and economically. Because I think we're in an economic zone that we've never seen before. And I want to know, what is the truth of it? What do the analysts think about? What do the people that are studying finance every single day think about, right? And then I want to hear about the success and the horror stories of building a business. Going from somebody from the University of Kentucky, getting a bachelor's degree, getting your, you got the BS and the BA. You, I believe, I'm trying to go off memory here. You have a doctorate in finance. I seen something in mathematics. I want to go over all your credentials.
Math is my master's.
A mathematics and master's. Oh, master's in mathematics. So I definitely want to go over that, because what I've been really thinking about is the value of education, and where does it take its place today? There's conversations about whether credentials matter today. And I think that I exist as a hybrid in a space to where I can see the value of both sides of the conversation, right? I can see the value of the mind that goes through the rigorous process of getting their doctorate degree, because I could imagine the level of discipline and willfulness that it takes for somebody to go through that to then become this fellow that is a part of a rare group of individuals who committed themselves to something and seen it all the way through. I understand that value 1,000%, more than people will ever understand. Then I understand the creative mind, somebody that looks at the world the way it is and says it's unfair, so I'm just gonna figure it out. And in that, you end up sidestepping ways that other people said you should have took. You design your own structures, design your own systems. You're colorful with the language that you utilize in order to get yourself to position. And this has been celebrated in other spaces of entrepreneurship, when a person essentially fakes it till they make it. But today, even if a person makes it, they will then be criticized for what they was faking at first. And so the question then becomes is, what does survive the criticism of credentialism today? What actually matters as we are in the age of artificial intelligence, where a person feels that the AI agent can have the degree and they don't need to, and they can just be the orchestrator or the operator of these machines. And then my side is looking at everything and saying that we need a hybrid of all of it. We need the intelligence class to lead in whatever expertise they have. We need the scientists, the engineers, the lawyers. We need the system builders. We need all of these people, because if we're going to nation build, then they have to be coming from credible places. But then we also need people who are outliers and system thinkers and challengers and disruptors, because each part plays its role, but only if they're coordinated and they're operating with the same mission agenda, right? And I think that there's a fear of being replaced by machines, that human beings are fighting for who gets to be validated. The problem is that nobody gets to dictate that validation except the people. The people connect with you. They want to continue to give you attention, and you can continue to convert that into an asset that you then pour back into your own personal branding or your business, which allows you to consistently scale and have growth. And the very people that's trying to tear you down end up building you up, because the number one asset today is attention. And the ability to manipulate that, hoard that, right, to do something right or wrong with it goes into the hands of whoever everybody's talking about. So having these conversations, I think, are important, so that we can actually get to a point of understanding, and the understanding allows us to get to the point of mastery. And I believe that's ultimately what the credential was supposed to represent. Mastery, something that we don't speak upon a lot. We talk about genius, we talk about gifts, we talk about being experts, but we rarely use the word mastery. And I think that there are some people in this world that have mastered economics, and they've mastered other people, but I don't think that we as a people have yet gotten to that point of mastery. So today I want to have that conversation but somebody who I believe has mastered aspects of their field, and we get to have a high-level conversation about where the world goes next. This is none other than my good brother, Dr. Boyce Watkins.
What's happening, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm blessed.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
I'm out of it, brother. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So, my brother, Dr. Boyce Watkins. First, let's get into your credentials a little bit. Why did you go get a master's in mathematics?
Because I needed to understand math in order to do a doctorate. I did not know that. Nobody in my family had ever done anything like this before. So I thought that if I went to college and it went pretty well, high school was terrible, but college went pretty well. I studied business, and I did not know how mathematical financial research is. It's very deep on math, statistics, all that stuff. So I started my doctoral work and just got my ass kicked. It was terrible. One day, man, my mother called me. I had a busy day in classes on Wednesday. I think Wednesday's like my busy day. And she called me like 5 p.m. and I was still in the bed. And she said, "Well, why are you still in the bed?" And I said, because it don't matter. No matter how hard I study, I can't get through these classes because I had to take classes with people that were working on their doctorate in math. And I hadn't even taken, Calc 2, Calc 3.
Yeah.
So, math was really my weakness. And I read, when I was 22, I read a book by Michael Jordan. And I don't remember a ton in the book, but one thing I remember him saying was that the way he became a great player was he would focus on his weakness and work on it until it became his greatest strength. So when they said defense was his weakness, he became Defensive Player of the Year. When they said strength, muscle mass was his weakness, he became one of the strongest players in the NBA. When they said that his jump shot wasn't very good, he got one of the best jumpers in the league, right? So I said, okay, right now math is my weakness. I'm gonna face it head on, and I'm gonna work on it until it becomes my greatest strength. So I went back to University of Kentucky, my alma mater. Had a long talk with my mother about it, and she co-signed on it. She was my number one cheerleader. And I went back and I spent 3 years doing nothing but obsessively studying math and statistics because I didn't want to be average. You know what I mean? I wanted to be the best in the world at what I did. And that's when I got into math, and also at the same time that was actually the beginning of my work in activism too, because I didn't even know I was the type of kid, man, where I would fail. I put it this way: all through high school, I never made an A in anything. I was usually in detention. I would get a lot of C's and D's and stuff like that. And so, but one day, when I was like about 24, 25, I read this article in the campus paper. Some white Republican was talking crazy about black people. And I remember I saw the president of the campus and I walked by him. It was the only time I saw him, the whole time I was there. And I said, how can somebody put this in a newspaper? Like, this is racist, right? And he said, well, if you disagree, you should write a response. I said, yeah, I'm gonna write a response. So I walked over to the little newspaper place and I said, I'd like to write something. Can you give me a space? And I bumped into a guy named Alex DeGrand, and Alex said, he said, just tell the editor you can have my spot because I don't want it anyway, right? So I went to the editor. I said, well, this guy Alex says I can have his spot. Can I write a rebuttal? So I did. And I did not know, for whatever reason, I was a pretty good writer. I had no idea because I don't know grammar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what happened was I read so many books and had done so much writing that I just began to know what a good sentence sounded like. I would just feel my way through it, almost like making music when you never took a music class. You know what I mean? So these articles, man, were getting read by everybody on the campus. I mean, it was now imagine University of Kentucky is a basketball school. The basketball players were they like almost like the gods of the campus. Everybody knew the basketball players because they would win a championship or go to the Final Four every year. They knew me like they knew the basketball players. Like I didn't have to introduce myself to anybody. I had to hide when I saw a crowd coming because I knew people want to talk to me. So it was my first experience learning that I could write. It woke me up as an activist in terms of just, talking about the things that pissed me off. And also it taught me a little bit about being in the public eye. And it's like a drug. At first, wow, look at this. All these people know me and like me and all that. But then I learned that can change very quickly. Right. So I learned a lot of lessons in that experience, man. So at the same time, I was studying math and all that. And that's when I went back and did my doctoral work, and that worked out pretty well.
So would you say like your criticism and that open criticism of people, especially at that point in media at that time, drove you to do that for other aspects of your life? Because you criticize people openly, from O'Reilly. Was that guy named Charles Wu or something like that?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
call him Chuck. You understand me? Like you have this ability to go against the grain, right? Where does that come from?
When I was little, my mother used to say, "Boy, your mouth will either make you great or get you killed." I'm curious to see which one. And then I remember when I met Cornel West, he said, "Your mother's probably right. It might be both, right?" so so it just came from an internal compass of that related to justice. And where I would get in trouble with my mother was if something wasn't right, I couldn't be quiet about it. If I'm being punished for something I did not do, well, I'm gonna stay with it. We're gonna have that debate, because this is not fair. You know what I mean? So at that point, I think also my experience as a black man, kind of living through the 90s and just seeing injustice everywhere. I mean, at that time, that's when people started realizing how many black men were going to prison and all that stuff. So that's traumatic. You're watching this happen left and right, and black men dying in the street and all that stuff. So that kind of just let me know that there were bigger fish, bigger fights to take part in. And on top of that, uh, it let me know that I could not do what everybody else is doing. Um, I saw behavior in my family, mainly things like drugs, right? Like both of my fathers were drug addicts. My biological father was on heroin, and my stepfather was on heroin, but he stopped, so that he could be a father. My biological father, I never got to know him. And so when I saw culture, I didn't connect to white people because I'm not white, and I would see flaws in their culture. But then also with black people, I would see certain things, particularly amongst black males, that were putting us in bad situations, prison, death, whatever. So I had to have like a critical eye just for survival. And so sometimes I would just observe it quietly, but then sometimes I'd speak up about it. So what happened is, I kind of became this person that didn't have a lot of friends, but I didn't really want a lot of friends. If me being your friend requires me to let go of who I am, then that's not a friendship for me. And so so really that desire to be critical, it's not me trying to be an asshole. It's just me trying to be honest. You know, like if we're losing as black people and we're struggling over here, here, and here, the way I was kind of raised is you need somebody that's gonna call you out on it and say, if you don't change this, then you're gonna keep having that problem, right? So what that ends up sounding like is me being critical, me being negative, but that's not the goal. The goal is to just say, what does it look like to work on your weaknesses
Right.
until they become your strength? And I think that's what's really required for us as a people.
Do you think it's still possible right now? Because I know you close with Dr. Claude Anderson. Do you think it's possible with the current mindset of Black America and the current economic reality that we find ourselves in today? Because we're far from where we were 10 years ago, right? And I'm just saying it from a psychological disposition, right? The way we think about what's possible, because things are possible if we have belief, right? But what do we collectively believe in anymore? Anybody who rises to look like something of the past, a person will automatically smite them and say that you're cosplaying an ancestor, right? That person could have just been inspired to say, "That's what I want to be," versus a rapper, right? Somebody builds up a platform, then they're automatically attacked online, right? We have had, I would say, small failures in what's the financial community, if you will, because big failures is looking at like WeWorks. You understand me? A man raising 40 something billion dollars and then almost losing all of it. We haven't had something to that scale, but we put so much of our spiritual faith in things that when they fail, we take it as a stain on all Black people. Oh, we can't do something. Never seen a white man say white people can't do something because the owner of WeWorks failed. You know what I mean?
And he feel bad. $46
Very
billion.
bad.
That's a lot of money.
So I want to know now, right? And I wonder what Dr. Claude Anderson thinks on something like this as well. The belief that we can still produce that economic reality to where we are sovereign, we are self-sustaining. And what do you think? Where do you think that we probably have gone too far in, right? Best case or worst case scenario, and then what's your optimistic best case scenario?
I think the best case scenario is this. I'll lay it out, in a certain context. I started doing this kind of thing about '06. And there were people before me, Dr. Claude Anderson, Marcus Garvey, etc. So I am not an originator of anything. I maybe I amplified certain ideas, but that's it. In '06, when I would go on urban radio stations and talk about things like generational wealth, people would tell me like, well, black people don't want to know about that stuff. Right. And my argument was, I said, well, I mean, every rap song I listen to, they rapping about money, money over hoes. I'm gonna die over money, right? Going to prison over money, just all this other stuff. So money matters. We just don't know how to get it in the right way. So to me, the thing that you want, if money's the thing that you want, then you should understand money. Right. So I just kind of pressed the issue and kind of kept doing my thing. But in my dream was, I said, man, I would love to live in a world one day where most black men understand that economic power is critical and essential for you to operate as a man in a competitive society. That did not exist in '06, '07, '08. So now when I go to InvestVest and I see thousands of people all there understanding concepts behind money and generational wealth, that's like a dream come true for me. That's like, and then I'm walking through and it was great. So many people were stopping me and trying to, I had to get a cop to help me get out of there, man. So it's like, okay, I played my part and I helped pass that baton and they're taking it to this level that I think is just extraordinary, right? So here's the thing. It ain't gonna happen overnight, right? In 2013, I wrote a book called It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar, A New Paradigm for Black America. And it was centered around wealth, education, family, and community. I went around the country kind of doing the tour, doing events around the book. Minister Farrakhan joined me for an event in Chicago where he and I just sat there for 2 hours talking to an audience in Cornell West and in other cities, stuff like that. And what I put in the book was something I call Project 2070. And I said that because black people are so extraordinary, because of the fact that whenever we center our attention on something, somebody rises to the top. Everybody don't rise to the top, but you get people. We end up taking things over. We have that spirituality when it's locked in. I don't believe we can be stopped. I said once we lock in on wealth, I believe we will be able to do something greater than what the Jews are doing. Right? Why? Well, because concepts like equality were never interesting to me. I don't care about equality. There's nothing magical about white people where I want to be equal to him. I used to run track for a lot of years. I never ran a race hoping to tie the race. I want to win. So in my view, there are things that we do now that I think actually, and it's not everybody, right? I'm talking about the leaders, talking about guys like yourself and Troy and Rashad and others, right? Where we're ahead of other communities when it comes to wealth. I know in the Black Business School, we got 9-year-olds that have a higher financial literacy level than the average college educated adult. So what this is going to turn into, in my opinion, it's not going to turn into a perfect black community or a panacea, but you're going to create those leaders, those captains of industry that will then be able to shift the masses. Because think about this, right? Most white males don't have the intellectual ability of an Elon Musk. But because you've got one Elon Musk, who's a trillionaire, this man is able to create over 1 million jobs for his people, right? When I was in Austin, Texas, man, I was driving and I saw these rows and rows of houses that all looked alike. And I said, what is that? And the guy said, oh, that's SpaceX. And that's where the Tesla factory is at. All those thousands of people were living there because Elon had created all this, right? So here's the thing. I'll center on this point. You don't need everybody to figure it out. But my job is not, I'm not a good bridge builder. If you're on some bullshit, I'm gonna let you just stay where you at, right? I'm more of a mobilizer. I'm the person that might talk to a 19 Keys and say, okay, you got the stuff, you're the superstar. Let me see how I can help you. How can I support this? Can I share information? Can I back you up? What does it take? Because I know that if you are at your best and have the courage to become your best, which you do, then you're going to influence millions of people. So I don't have to go talk to millions of people. I'm talking to you, right?
Lead with the leaders.
Right. And we got leaders in our community. Like I tell my students, I said, look, I don't teach any students. I teach teachers. The mother, father, all that. All these people are teachers, and it's a confidence thing. I think that once we start really believing that we can compete, then we will start competing and we'll stop asking for permission to compete. We'll stop worrying about what other people think about us competing. We'll stop worrying about the opposition, because at that point we'll understand power. Power is not typically given to anybody. Power is something. If you read Powernomics, first thing Dr. Claude Anderson says is that power is the ability to pursue your agenda despite the opposition of others.
Mhm.
Now, I contrast that with how many black folks I hear that almost act like we got to get permission from somebody, or every time we have power, they don't like it. Well, of course they ain't gonna like it. The Spurs didn't enjoy watching the Knicks win a championship, but that didn't stop the Knicks from winning the championship.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So once we understand those basic rules, and I think a lot of us do, I'm seeing momentum, man. I think, I mean,
So
now,
you optimistic
yes,
essentially about the future.
yeah,
Well, let me ask you this, Sam. You're somebody who has been in this space for a long time. You understand the grievances of Black America, right? And when it comes to you being a public figure, right? You've been attacked by things that you sell, promoted, opinions that you've given. What lessons have you learned from the beginning of doing this? And let's say to a level of naivety of like, I just want to help people. I just want to do this. Right. And then you actually go through the real attacks on your name, and then, because I feel it like this, and I've gotten those attacks over time, right? And sometimes you wipe them away and you don't even care because some people are crazy, right? And then sometimes a person is criticizing your infrastructure, the way you do things, right? And what you realizing that they're actually poking a hole at the weakest part of your whole entire enterprise. And they're actually giving you an opportunity to sew that up and saying that, well, hey, this thing that I'm criticizing you for, if you actually fix that, you actually be legit, right? So I wonder if that ever happens to you when you look at the way people criticize you. Is there something that you're learning from? Is there, when you came in naive about things, are there things that you're more realistic about, right? Is there a different approach that you take now in this space than you did when you first started off?
yeah, very different. I remember one time I had a conversation with a white libertarian billionaire,
Mm.
and he checked out some of the stuff I was doing. He said, "I like what you're doing." I said, "Thank you." And he said, what you're doing is dangerous because," he said, "you're actually teaching black people to be competitive, right? To not sort of sit in the victim box and, ask for support." He said, and one thing about that is competition is a grown man's contact sport. He said, so when you run up the hill with your gun out, because you're really trying to get something, he said, don't be surprised when they pull their guns out, right? So what that says is, it goes back to, how Tyson always said, oh, well, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. So that resilience, that ability to fight, is absolutely essential in terms of anything that you do. And one thing that will always happen is, if you do something that has an impact, you're always going to have somebody that becomes a critic. And how you process that really is a growth opportunity. Because in the beginning, maybe you just want everybody to like you, right? It's like, why don't you? I'm trying to be helpful. And then the worst thing about criticism is sometimes it's accurate, like you really made a mistake, but then sometimes it's out of thin air and it's not even true. And you have to be able to accept both, right? You have to accept the fact life ain't fair. Sometimes people gonna lie about you, but then sometimes you have to say, man, I gotta acknowledge the fact that you pointed out a real weakness that I have. And so this is where mental health and therapy become really important, because the thing that gives me confidence is the journey I took to learn how to love myself. Self-love and self-confidence are siblings. If you love yourself, not just the good parts, not just the part that's winning, but the parts that are flawed, that make mistakes, where you're saying, oh man, I can't believe I did that. If you learn to just love yourself in that way, then you become confident, right? You can walk in and you mess up. Somebody said, oh man, he's stupid, da da da. Look at him, da, da. They making fun of you. You're like, yeah, I did mess that up. You know what I mean? Like, you can do it because you know that does not take you out of the game. You see? So to me, the attitude you have about yourself and your purpose and all that, and you've locked in on your purpose, like you're mission driven, you can get in a zone where the criticism will happen, but so what? Okay, what you said, it might be true, it might not. I'm not walking away from this. You know what I mean? You're not. And the other thing too is, you got to be careful with critics, because if you spend too much time trying to appease the critics, then you're gonna not fulfill your purpose because the people that really support you are gonna be like, what are you doing? Think about it. Barack Obama is one of the most beloved people in this country, one of the most respected humans on the planet. Half the country hates his guts. Like, it doesn't matter what he does, right? So imagine if he spent all his time trying to keep them from criticizing him. It's not gonna. So even when I've said critical things of Obama and he blows me off. And if I was him, I'd blow me off too. You're not. He's not here for. You're not here for the critics. You're here for the people that love you and believe in you. And if you are purpose driven and you're good at what you do, you're gonna have those people that will lock in with you. And that's what I learned. I learned the hard way. I'm talking about to the point where it cost me a lot of money. I learned the hard way that there's like at least a couple types of people. There's people who talk shit from the sidelines who will never support anything that you do. Then there may be people who might follow you, because they just see you on social media. Then there's people who really support you, who will like write a check, substantive support. Those are different groups of people. And this last group is more important than the outside group. And what people have done, I've seen is, because I've done this, that's a mistake I made is I distracted myself from doing my best for this last group by trying to deal with that other group. And I lost because I was making a deal with the devil. If you're trying to get somebody to hate you, to like you, you will almost never succeed. Because in fact, sometimes their hatred of you is driven by something that ain't got nothing to do with you. So what I have learned is you must be self-critical so that you can get better at what you do. You have to be careful about who you align with and associate with. I have, in terms of my biggest mistakes, I have literally watched myself hand somebody a gun and then watch them grab that gun and turn and shoot me in the face with it. Right? So being thoughtful about character, so I will say that to this day, I observe people's character a little more before I say, before I hand them power, right? Because I learned that just being in the space gives them power. So you learn little things like that, but most importantly, it's the resilience, man. When at one time when Ice Cube and I were working on that thing during the pandemic when he was doing this political thing, I remember him saying something that I really liked. He said, "You can't cancel a soldier." So in my mind, I was like, "Yeah, that's a great point because if you're a soldier, you're gonna get shot, you're gonna get beat up, bad things are gonna happen, but you fight to the death."
Right.
Period.
No, I like that, and I think it's important not to water down who you are for the appeasement of others. Right? Because people may mock your process, but when you get results, they'll love you again. Right? And I learned that to be true. And, but I also think about the type of person you are, if you're a person that moves with integrity, a person that moves with honor, right? Then it's important to make sure that everything that you do has integrity and honor built into it. Yeah. As we're growing, there's always going to be blind spots, right? As I'm taking on this journey, I don't claim to be the most credentialed person in the world. I don't claim to be the expert at everything. I'm experiential. I learn as I go. I learn as I grow, right? I make mistakes in front of the people, right? And so everything is not going to be this perfect line of this is keys, he did everything right, and this is success. It's more so this is this young black man who thinks he can change the world in some sort of capacity, and he never stopped trying to do that, or he never stopped doing that. And along the way, here's the journey, ups and downs, right? But it's still a trajectory of going up, right? It's so like right now we're here at Factory, right? Inside there's a family office. There's highly credentialed people that do wealth management and things of that nature that I'm in conversation with every day. They have licenses and they're SEC regulated, and I'm learning so much about things that I don't even have time to always teach it, right? And at this point now, I'm gaining experience that somebody usually in my position don't gain because I'm learning about the regulatory side of things. I'm learning about the legal framework side of things, right? And then the question becomes is how do you catch up where what you're learning to get people to understand that this is now the mindset you're using as you're moving forward in your building. You're taking all your lessons from yesterday's, all the criticisms, all the constructive things, and you're saying, okay, tomorrow is going to be a better day. And I believe that makes really great leaders. You're always going to be forward on the mission, right? There's something that is in you that God made you for, so you're never going to quit. But the complexity of completing one of God's mission, right, gets, I would say, every single day more and more complex because of the things that you have to hold. You have to be good at this social media thing, which is image, it's PR, right? It's narrative, right? Then you have to be good at communicating the idea so that you're understood in a world, right, to where people don't have great understanding or critical thinking skills. You have to be good at having the will to want to help people build generational wealth and financial institutions, but knowing the best way to go about it, right? You have to watch out for those who will try to criticize and dampen, right, your influence while continuing to build influence in the market. You have to make sure that you're not over weaponizing the grievances of our people without making sure that you are giving them products that are actually valuable as well. You could be a person that is ultra holistic and spiritual, but at one point in time, do you also make sure that things are science backed so that there's evidence in your claims? There's a lot of growth and maturity that goes in this process and development, especially now that we all have the tools to fact check, right? We have the tools to do our own independent research. I did a tour last year, did not say, follow me. I said, save yourself, right? And that was about people becoming sovereign thinkers, doing for self, setting up your own systems to where letting me help you think in a way that allows you to not need me. Right? That's a very selfless act for me to go on there and say, hey, stop needing me. That's what this whole tour is about. Right? But then also, putting up your own money to do something like that is taking profits from things that you're doing and literally just going on around a tour and teaching Black people.
Yeah, well, I think that as we deepen our understanding of Black economics, I would expect and hope that people would realize that you supporting the community and doing what you do, it should not be a pure act of complete selfless charity where you're spending
definitely
money and losing lots of money to help the community. I personally think if I believe in you, which I do, I think you should be doing well because I know that by taking care of you, I'm taking care of myself because
Yeah.
it's an ecosystem, right? I think one of the most misleading ideologies that we've embraced, and I blame it on the far left in terms of pushing us in certain directions. Not to say that they don't have good ideas, but when we got to the idea that we started to believe falsely that anybody supporting the Black community must be poor while they're doing it, that you got to go broke helping me out. That does a couple things. One, it weakens you, and it also disempowers me, right? Because we forget that the same community you're helping has the ability to help you and show up for you, right? And it's and so ultimately we have to really think about our economic models in terms of building ethical, sustainable economies around Black empowerment. I'm not a capitalist. I never have been, because capitalism, in its extreme, can be very predatory and very harmful. But I'm a big believer in business ownership and free enterprise because that's a key to power. And if power is used ethically, then you can really get some stuff done. So if I, again, whether you are my pastor, my leader, or my teacher, or any of these things, I want you to be okay. You know what I mean? So if you come in my community, you teach a class, and you say, well, I'm gonna make it free because I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it, but here's the thing. If you go in that audience, and I know for yourself, you'll go somewhere and hundreds of people might show up, right? Maybe thousands. All those people got money in their pocket. All those people are gonna spend money somewhere. So if I really respect you and respect the mission, why in the hell is it that I'm gonna let you do something for me for free, but then I'm gonna go take that $30 and spend it at the liquor store? No, the liquor store don't care about me. You do. So I think it's okay for you to say, no, the event's not free. It's gonna be $30. It's a fair price. If all 1,000 of you pay, we have 30,000. That way we can go to the next city. That's how things should be done. And so this is where I think we have to be free and open to respectfully critique the way movements were done before. Like, for example, I've always said, well, the Black Panthers had a free lunch program. Okay. I wonder why they didn't have, the 10-cent lunch program or something like that, so that the activists that are doing the work could pay their bills so they don't have to go work for a capitalist on Monday to get money, right? Because that's what happens. Because at the end of the day, you need resources, right? Or maybe instead of the 10-cent lunch program, maybe it could be something where you pay what you can, right? So if you really are broke, then come on in. But if you, but if you aren't broke, we're going to ask you to pay 10, 20 cents, a dollar, whatever, right? Because, to me, a lot of our challenge as a community comes from the fact that we over here being socialists and communists in terms of how we deal with each other, but then we got to go serve the capitalists because all of us got to go back to work on Monday. And that's not real freedom, in my opinion. In fact, when you are that trapped in the capitalist system, where they have you so deep in debt that you're going to work every day, what's happening is it's kind of a weird thing. You can't really be fighting for Black empowerment because you're supporting white supremacy at the same time. You're giving more time to building his business than you're giving to building your own community. So no wonder his business is growing and your community is failing because things grow when you invest in those things.
Yeah.
So I think that what you're saying, man, makes perfect sense.
Let me ask you, what do you think the word, because I've been seeing a lot of this conversation around the word pro-Black and what it means, right? And there was, what did this tweet? There was this one particular thread that was about pro-Blackness that I think I disagree with, but part of it was about, I think it was about having people support you. I don't know what it was. I want to get this correct before I move forward, because I found it interesting, because when I think about pro-Blackness and I think about Black business, right? Supporting a business that is a small to medium-sized business, which represent like 70% of businesses, I think are important. And that's what you're going to find typically in Black America, right? You could say support small and medium-sized businesses in our community, and that would be the same thing. Then you have people who are good at doing business, right? And then that means that they can service their clientele, they can create sustainable or scalable models, right? And they're just really good at entrepreneurship because they have the will to learn, grow, either raise capital, et cetera, to build and boost something. Then you could be pro-Black in the essence that you can find a company and buy it, and all of a sudden it's a Black-owned company, right? White people do that. That's why we have WET, you understand me, white entertainment television. I ain't gonna call it Black, it's white entertainment television. You feel me? Because it's what they want us to be paying attention to, right? It's another conversation. You know what I'm saying? But I just think about this because I think that the conversation can't really be had correctly because we're not defining things as a collective. And if we're not operating from the same definition, then we're having different conversations, right? So I would love to know, like, when you say I'm pro-Black, what does that mean?
I start from the core. When I think about pro-Black, it means that if you talk about my community, I want people in my community to have a better quality of life, particularly in 3 key areas, and that those areas tend to be health, wealth, and relationships. I want to create a community where for Black children, their mental and physical health is strong. Not a lot of this trauma that comes from the violence and the abuse and things like that. Their physical health is good, right? That's where you got to confront the fried chicken culture and, all this other stuff, and exercise and all that. Relationships. I think about that in terms of how you and I interact as Black men, our relationship, how I interact with my wife, how I interact with my children. And these are sciences. You can study how to have better relationships, right? My relationship with myself, right? A lot of times I might think I hate him, but really I hate me, right? Which makes me hate him, right? So that's important. And then the wealth piece is essential because you live in a capitalist society, and health, wealth, and relationships overlap. They all interact with each other. So if my financial situation ain't right, then my mental health is not going to be right. And maybe my physical health is in jeopardy because I might go out and get shot trying to go make some money or whatever, right? Or I'm stressed out and getting cancer because I'm going to work every day at a job I hate and being mistreated every day, right? And then relationships play a part, right? Relationships can enhance your wealth. You manage relationships properly. You build wealth that way. You get things done. But if you fracture relationships, like I think about celebrities I've seen who have no clue. I'm talking about really famous people who have no clue why nobody will work with them, right? And I'll be thinking, well, because nobody ever told you that you're kind of an asshole, like that's why no one will work with you. But a lot of times it may be because there's some undiagnosed, untreated trauma, or maybe I just don't know how to interact with others in a way where they feel heard and respected, and vice versa. You see what I mean? So to me, if you're talking about being pro-Black, it would start with just that, right? Like if you're in the Black community, your life will be better because you're in the Black community. And that to me should be devoid initially of any conversation about identity politics or I know the difference between a pro-black Democrat and a pro-black Republican, and each of them will accuse each other of being a coon, right? And no, pro-blackness, in my opinion, should not come with a political envelope or gay versus straight. No, no. I just want you to be good. I want you to be okay. I want you to do well. I want you to have people that love you, and I want you to show love to others. To me, that's pro-blackness. And then at that point, we might have our individual manifestations of that, right? So if I happen to be a Democrat, maybe I tell the Democratic Party, you need to have some black policies on the table. If I'm a Republican, I do the same thing with the Republican Party. If I'm a wealth guy, so you talked about black business. You're right. Black businesses come in different shapes and sizes and different qualities. Some businesses have it together. Some struggle. Some teeter in terms of unethical behavior. Right. That's going to lead to a diverse array of experiences. But if I'm pro-black, in my opinion, what I'm going to try to do is at least give the black man an opportunity to sell me something. I don't have to buy it, but hey, look, I'm gonna give you. I want to support you. Give me a reason to support you, and I'll even pay a black tax. I'll pay more. The Supermind coffee, right? I'll pay more for your coffee than for that other man's coffee because you have black privilege in my mind. Because that black privilege is something I can manifest by just saying, look, we're in the same group. This is what I want. I don't want Starbucks right now. You see what I mean? So and that now, does that mean I support every black business in front of me? No, some people don't make the cut.
Right.
But I think to me, anti-black might mean when you do things like generalize. Like let's say we do business and one of us has a bad experience. This nonsense about, well, that's why I don't work with black people. Nobody goes through that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that just kind of being aware of our bias, because the biggest problem for black businesses, it starts with the fact that white people don't support black business. That's a problem. But then it also comes down to the fact that black people boycott black businesses too. So black business owners have trouble because blackness, unfortunately, in the eyes of many people, black and white, it's almost like it's almost like typecast. How somebody's in a movie and they play a certain role and people see them in that role for the rest of their life and they can't do another movie.
Yeah.
So as a black man, you're typecast. It's like, okay, if you show up as a comedian, a drug dealer, a thug, a basketball player, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. But if you say, no, like I got a son, I'm his bonus dad, but he's 6'9", right? He walks through Chicago. Everybody thinks he plays for the Bulls or something, right? So for him, when he says, no, I don't know how to play basketball that well, but I'm an engineer, people get confused. They're like, wait, that's not supposed to happen. So when a black man shows up and says, well, actually, I own the building or I'm running the company, that throws people off, cognitive dissonance. And then what can happen is because you're out of position, I'm going to nitpick at you more because I'm looking for you to show me why you really aren't qualified. Like when I became a professor as a black man, if I make a mistake in class, versus the white man down the hall with the beard, if he makes a mistake, they say, oh, the professor made a mistake. If I make the mistake, they say, oh, he must not be qualified, right? So that's where the challenge comes in terms of perception, for sure.
Right. So I was looking at the definition. Well, can't really find just a one source definition, right? But you can kind of go into some of our earliest archives when pro-black was used as a term, right, from a modern political sense, right, which really comes out in 1966. There was something called the New South Student, an issue called the Black Power Controversy. In the introduction, Janet Dewar wrote that Black Power controversy has forced movement people to reevaluate their role, and that as a Black American, she made no apology for the decidedly pro-Black tone. This is not proof that nobody said it earlier, but this was one of the earliest uses in the archive. And when you kind of go into that, it's more so when you say pro-Black tone, you're talking about people that are pro these things for us. Are you for us when it comes to alignment? Are you for Black people having power? Are you for Black people having the ability to self-define themselves? Are you for Black collective identity and dignity? Right? Like it's more so, are you for Black people having power? I think is the most important aspect of that in the first place. Right? Does somebody get to decide, a Black person's politics? Right? Because being pro-Black would then allowing them to control and decide their own politics. So to me, it almost goes to autonomy. that being pro-Black is saying that you believe that Black people should be free and have autonomy to decide, and that no outside factors should decide who and what you can or cannot do. And if a person is specifically pushing towards that, like I believe in Black wealth, is saying that I believe in the closing of the racial wealth gap, that we should have same income or higher income levels than other communities. Like if we say that we want to close the wealth gap between Black and Indians, right, or Asians rather, we're saying we actually want higher household income than whites. We're not saying we want equality, right? We said we want higher. That would be a pro-Black thing, right? If you're saying that I'm for Black men making their own decisions, starting their own type of communities, their own type of businesses, and deciding what they want to say on their podcast and not say, that is pro-Blackness if we're defining it by this term, right? And I think over time it gets warped in what it even means, right? And so I think it's important to understand that just the behavior of believing that Black people deserve a level of sovereignty and autonomy and freedom to make their own choices and decisions, right, should be at a human level of understanding. But because of our unique position in America, to where we always have to have liberation language because we are not completely free in our mentality, in our mindset, or against the economic and financial restrictions that come from the systems that have been here for hundreds of years, that always took the language of what Black means and legally coded it as somebody who is supposed to go through the hurdles of life, right? Where white is more so a pathway to natural citizenship, being Black is literally being blacklisted. Right? And so to be pro-Black is saying that, no, you blacklist these people. I'm for these people having all the rights in the world, doing whatever they want to do when they want to do it.
Well, you know what? That's a great way to look at it, man. And you're right. Being Black is similar to being blacklisted. You know, Blackness is a brand just like Nike's a brand or Walmart's a brand. And it, like you think about it, right? Or if I said, give me some stereotypes on what it means to be Asian. You're going to say the good at math, you know, maybe you know some Kung Fu, you know, whatever, right? But if you say, give me stereotypes of being Black, most of those stereotypes are not going to be positive, right? And that is something that we have to face and confront. And what it requires is something that you're good with, which is critical thinking skill, so that you understand the nature of systematic racism in the first place, right? Systematic racism comes from a system. It's not, you know, a white lady being mean to you at the grocery store. Like people will talk about that, like, oh, I think that lady doesn't like Black people. I don't really care if you like me or not. I like myself. You're out. I like myself. My wife likes me. My kids like me. That's all I need. But the systematic racism means that you're receiving racism that is more structured, more planned, more strategic, and it's coming from a system. So the question then has to be asked, and this is why critical thinking skills and consciousness are so important, is you have to be able to level up your thinking. That's why I love the term high level conversations. I think the higher level you go, the more conscious you are. Like a bird that flies up above the forest, he can see more of what's going on. You see what I mean? So in my view, if you elevate your consciousness and you see the whole system and you say, okay, this is how it's designed, this is why they keep us over here and we should be over here, whatever, then what you learn is systems are a manifestation of someone's planned reality or whatever it is, right? Like if I live in a prison, that somebody designed that prison, right? So if I want to be free of the prison, there are a lot of us who will get in a prison situation, meaning, and I say the prison of America, the prison of American capitalism, and we'll try to become liberated within the prison without realizing that maybe you have to get out of that, right? You can create alternative systems. Like one thing we do in the Black Business Schools, we have something called for how we train kids, and I call it the STURDY model, STERDY. It stands for Systems, Technology, Entrepreneurship, Relationships, and Delegation for the youth, right? The system part means if I train my son how to think on a systematic level, then he's not going to be a slave to systems because he's going to see the system he's in and say, okay, this ain't for me. The system might be his job. Okay, I hate this job. They treat me bad, da, 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 da. Okay, well, you know, son, you can be an entrepreneur. I'm going to go develop another system. And in this system, I'm going to have more freedom and access. I'm going to manufacture Black privilege. Like, so for example, I came into your office. This is a system. And ain't no white supremacy really around here. You know what I mean? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. Maybe there's a landlord or something. I don't know. But ain't no, a white man can't come in and say, well, I get to tell you guys what to do because I'm white. We'd laugh at that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because we consciously chose to be in a space where black privilege is abundant. Right. But if one of us wasn't conscious, maybe I'd say, I won't go hang out with that guy. He's black. I'm going to go down to IBM, right? Where the real people are, the real important people are. And next thing you know, I'm getting kicked around. They mistreat me because I'm black. And then I say, oh man, it's hard being black. Well, but it's hard being black because you shouldn't, there's certain spaces you shouldn't be in. Positioning is everything. And one thing I really believe is that when we position our children in the educational system that is run by certain people who don't have our best interests at heart, don't be surprised when they're miseducated, when they're mistreated. When you position yourself in the economic system in the wrong way, especially when you're a black man, don't be surprised when you're unemployed, left behind, don't get the right job, don't get the promotion, don't get the pay raise, because you ain't white.
Yeah.
So to me,
but then some people would say, not to cut your wisdom, would say that when we look at the Asian community, they are able to exceed the standards, right, of the system.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it more so comes down to this. Black men are at large at fault for what's happening to black men. And the reason that I say that, I wrote this article on Substack, and it was like, I never had a mentor or something like that, right? And it speaks towards my upbringing and the fact that when you're a young black man coming up, sometimes other black men look at you as their replacement, right? And they fear that replacement. Sometimes it's happened in the hoods with fathers, and the father's afraid of their son's potential. So instead of fostering that potential to be better than him, they get to this point to where they're actually fighting against their son, right? And they may do things to try to shrink your growth because they may fear, right, who you become. And this is not just played out nowhere near in the black community. This is kind of like worldwide phenomenon that occurs in men that don't have enough belief in themselves to want to see their son go further than them, because that's what a true father should do. He should elevate you. He should grow you and nurture you beyond his own existence so that he's evolving through you, right? But what happens, black men are the most under-mentored, right, in the world. And that means that, we talked about this earlier, that if you don't have a mentorship, you don't have a protection network, right? So when you have mistakes, there's no soft landing for you. There's nobody to help absorb that, to help you get back on your feet, right? From a reputation standpoint, from a capital standpoint, from a mental standpoint, you're typically a lot of times on your own, right? And then when we're talking about sponsorship, the lack of sponsorship, again, there's no capital. There's nobody putting your name at these tables. You understand me? Trying to give you opportunities because they see your potential. So therefore, when we are getting into positions, right, in corporate, you see one black man in a room, but does he have this pro-black thing to where he wants to intentionally help you because he knows that you are outnumbered, right? And so these have been studies on this that show that black men are the most under-mentored of all groups, black women and whoever else you can name. That's an important thing to change, because if we can mentor, have the sponsorship and the protection networks, right? Now we can take those young men that are in our community and help guide them to that next stage. And this means that you have to get rid of the fears and the insecurities that you have, right, of this fear of replacement. And psychologically, this is the narcissism of small indifferences. When there's somebody who is so similar to you, you fear they're replacing you. This is the problem with Christianity and Islam, right? So they're not going to fight against Judaism because it's so different in how they regard who Jesus is. But in Christianity and Islam, one regards Jesus as a prophet, one may say he's God, right? And then when you look at the similarities in the ritual, they say, well, these are close enough that somebody may go from Christianity to Islam. You're not seeing nobody go from Islam to Judaism or Christianity to Judaism, right? Where they may think that Jesus is not a prophet or God or anything. So you wouldn't say, well, this is our enemy that we should have a fear of being replaced by because it's so different. You want to look at who's closer and who's similar. So that's something that I think that we don't understand, and because we don't have a system in place. So oftentimes we talk about the systems that are in place versus the systems that we're building, because the systems that we're building should then go against the systems that are in place. this is what the difference between, I would say, sometimes other communities as we look at them, is that their culture becomes a system that allows them to thrive. So the question becomes, do we have a culture that is our system, that acts as our system, that we can thrive? The answer becomes no. And so until we become intentional about that, then it doesn't matter white supremacy, because we already know what that looks like. We know how the banking institutions are set up. We know that when it comes to venture funding and capital, Black people getting less than 1%, which is basically none, right? So we can't look at that system and say it's unfair. The question becomes, is knowing how the pieces are laid out, what system do you build to give yourself an unfair advantage?
I think that's a great point. And when you so you mentioned earlier about Black men being under mentored, and I believe Black men are best mentored by Black men,
Yes, sir.
even though others can step in.
Right.
I don't
And
know.
that study was about looking at how white men mentor young white men, how Black women mentor Black women. Like, it looked at the group, and that's where it looks at the findings and say Black men are greatly under mentored by Black men specifically.
Yeah, so what you said reminded me of I have a friend that runs something called the Urban Youth Racing School in Philadelphia, and she would do these panels where she would get Black men, like Charles Barkley and people like that, to sit on panels, and it was called What It Takes, I think was what she called it, and they would talk to young boys about success in life, things like that. And what she found was that she had a very hard time finding men that had enough confidence in themselves to feel like they could be a mentor to a young man, right? So I think that there's an effort in
So you
America.
got to mentor the men to mentor the boys.
Right, right. And a lot of times if you consider the way America's shaped, I think it was Malcolm X who said that America loves to keep the Black man as a little boy or a little girl or a clown, right? And I think that that can diminish the confidence of men to really have a commitment uh connecting to what masculinity really looks like, right? Um when I saw my father, I connected masculinity to providing, protecting, and holding something down, whatever that meant, like your family, your property, whatever it was. You're responsible for something. And I want you to think about, anybody listens to think about how often you see Black men who run from responsibility, who just say, "Oh, I'm dating that girl. She got kids. I ain't trying to take none of that on." Not to say everybody should do that, but when my wife, I married a woman that had 3 kids. I saw there's a great opportunity to mentor. I said, "Wow, I could probably teach you some things." I love when I was a track coach. That was a great opportunity. Okay, y'all listening? All right, let me drop some knowledge on you. Right, that was fun for me. But as I got older, I realized not a lot of men, and there are men who get it, but there's a lot of men who don't, right? And I think what happens is either when you're in survival mode and you feel like you're barely getting by, and also you never saw a man do that. You never saw a man take responsibility for the kids in the neighborhood and say, like the way I run my neighborhood, back in Chicago, is any child that comes in my house is going to be my child while you're in my house. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to teach you whatever's required. Black, white, Asian, don't matter. But not everybody was raised on that. I learned that from watching how my father connected, because my dad was in the police department, and he was a commander. So he commanded hundreds of officers. Everybody in the neighborhood, when they had a problem, they come to the house. So he knew he had a stewardship role in the community. I don't think a lot of men feel confident enough to do that. And also, I'll say this too: there's a difference in mentorship, I believe, in a situation where, let's say you are the one Black guy in the all white department versus a Black man running an organization, right? So you're the CEO of a company. A young Black man says, "Hey, I admire you. I look up to you. I want to be just like you." You take him under your wing. You teach him things because there's room for both of you. You know that you make him great. He can help you run the organization. He makes you greater because you're collaborating. There's space for everybody.
Yeah.
The problem with white supremacy is when you get in there and you know that you in a company that's only going to let one Black person be in the department. You see another Black person and you become like the guy in Django. You know what I mean? Like who was that over there, right? And I think that scarcity can create those situations. I've seen it with Black women too.
Right, but that becomes the question though, because then it becomes, is it the white supremacy, right? Or is it the lack of, I guess, pro-Blackness in the spirit or intentionality with those who are there? Because this is black executive. He's at this company. He sees a young man come in there. Do you give him a hard time, right? Or do you look out for them? You look out for them. Maybe you can duplicate this situation more and more to where over 5 to 10 years time, all of a sudden, right, we went from 1% here to 20 to 30%, right? Or does the cycle continue to where it be like, look, man, we in the white man's world. This is how I got to treat you, right? There's no intentionality. Versus as a Jew man at that company, you see a young Jew boy that comes in there, right? And he says, I'm going to be intentional about helping shaping your career path, right? That one does the same thing for the next one. That one gets in position of hire more people. All of a sudden, you see a 30, 40% increase. Asian man sees the same thing, right? Continues to do that. So is it our mentality, right, that is not being intentional, or is it the system that we're accepting our role in and we're actually furthering the system itself by believing and becoming nihilistic about the possibilities of dominating?
I think it comes down to the individual for sure. Because I've seen both. I've seen situations where the other black person in the room didn't want nothing to do with me because I was black.
Right.
That actually happened when I was teaching at Syracuse. They had 90 professors in the whole business school, not one black person, right? So they brought in 3 of us at the same time. They literally forced them to hire black people because every time a black person applied, they would reject them and give some ambiguous reason why. And the central campus said, y'all got to hire some black people. Yeah. So they literally paid half of our salary for them just to get them to hire. So they didn't really want us, but they were willing to take us for a discount, right? So we felt like the Little Rock Nine. We didn't have no mentors. There were no other black people I could talk to. So there was me, another brother, and a woman. And I went to the brother. First thing, I darted over to him. We became friends instantly. But the woman, she kept her distance, right? Yeah. So I thought maybe she, I don't know. I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe she just was awkward with people or whatever. So I called her and I said, hey, I just wanted to, I let you know, hey, if I made you uncomfortable or something, I hope we can get past that. I feel that it's the 3 black people here. We should get along and get to know each other. And I said, and I made a joke and I said, because I kind of thought you didn't want to be around the other black people. Yeah. And she literally said, well, I really don't. she said, I don't want to be seen as only hanging out with the black people. And now, mind you, years later, so I didn't talk to her for 5 years. Years later, when those white folks strung her up and she needed support, guess who she came to, right? So she came to me, she said, let me tell you what these white people are doing to me. And I said, wait, I thought this whole being white thing was working out for you. So you can run into that, right? But I've also seen scenarios where I think black unity is stronger than we give it credit for. There are black folks who don't get it, but the ones who get it really get it. I'll tell you, as quiet as kept, Michael Jordan does not get credit for being pro-black, right? Because the things he said in the past or whatever. Man, I went to the Nike campus and visited the Jordan brand. The former CEO, Larry Miller, is a friend of mine. He didn't hire nothing but black people. Like, he was intentional. Yeah. Like, he just don't brag about it. He don't tell everybody. But literally, Michael went up in Nike. He created a whole black building. Yeah. Every single person in that building was black, and that wasn't by coincidence. That was intentional, right? So you have people, and I'm not just putting Michael Jordan on a pedestal. I know he's complex, but you have black people that are 100% down. That's why I don't write a black person off just because you're a Democrat or a Republican, or just because you're corporate or academic. You really got some people out here that really understand and really get it. You know what I mean? So I think that building on that, we've got a lot to build on, right? But to your point, though, you are correct. The confidence has to go up. I think that the consciousness must go up. It bothers me personally when I see a black man who has embraced the selfishness of American capitalism to say, like, for example, somebody says, well, Jay-Z has made $1 billion. The people in the Marcy projects where he came from should have benefited from this somehow. I think the projects are still the projects, right? I would like to be able to go somewhere and meet 50,000 people who can say, my life is better because of what this man did. I can't find that. And you say that online, you're going to have a bunch of Negroes in the chat saying, don't be looking at that man's pockets and that's his business, that's his money, that's his whatever. But my position is, if you made all this wealth from the credibility granted to you by black people, then you do actually owe something to black people. You've taken the brand of blackness. We are trendsetters around the world. We have the littest culture on the entire planet, and you sold that to somebody and you made yourself a whole bunch of money. There should be a kickback. There should be some kind of investment. There is a responsibility. And that is a debatable topic, to your point.
Yeah, I think that that's key. And I don't know the full philanthropy arm of Jay-Z, but I do think that anybody that gets to a point of $1 billion, right, whether it's evaluation or whether you actually got that liquid, you go borrow against it, whatever that looks like in real life, there should be an easy story of knowing exactly who you impact.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a radical thing. I don't think that's controversial. I think that that's standard.
Yes.
Right. I survived this environment. This is what I've done for that environment I came from, because I know what it's like. And I have more than I will ever need.
Yes.
Because the idea of calling yourself a billionaire is that you're saying that I have more than I will ever need. I have more than I will ever need. That is what you're going and saying to everybody. I have more than you have. Right. That's another thing you're saying. I'm a billionaire. I have more than everybody has. There's a small club that I'm a part of, and we hold more resources than 99% of the people on the planet Earth, right? And at any given time, I have the resources to change people's lives, to change communities, to impact the world if I so choose, right? So the billionaire is just telling people the evaluation, right, or the amount of money you have, but it tells you nothing about who you are.
Yes.
Right? What you do with your money says a lot about who you are, right? So this idea that even the celebration of what a person has as a status, right, is the problem itself, right? Because a person walking around saying I'm a billionaire is just saying, look, I have a whole lot of resources that I probably don't even need, right? But love me for what I have, not for what I do. Yeah. So when you accept a person and love them and you celebrate them, and that becomes aspirational to you, they're going to get more of those things that you love. And when we look at hip hop has become so intrinsically tied to capitalism, and Black excellence has become so intrinsically tied to capitalism, that a person is not telling you what they do, because capitalism, you don't have to be, in order to be celebrated, has nothing to do with meaningful impact, social impact. It's all about what I have. Yeah. Elon Musk saying the announcement of Elon Musk being a trillionaire has nothing to do with his impact in the world. Some people would argue that, he's making electric vehicles and whatever other impact he may or may not have. But your philanthropy arm should be so strong. Your foundation should be so strong. And I'm talking about your actual foundation that is allocating money through these different philanthropic causes that I know you're allocating money towards, because you have taxes that you have to pay. So you want to get that tax advantage. The question is, where's that money going to? What happens is they get in these small circles. So now that money is going to white community, Asian community, Jewish community. It's going to all these places. You might see somebody put some money into a Black college, but then how much money have they gave to these white universities? Right? And it may pale in comparison. When they do something for us, they want all the credit in the world for it. Right? Because nobody is going to look at you and be like, oh, you gave this foundation that already has, this, what's those things called, what a college has? Endowment. You're not going to get that much credit if you give Princeton $1 million. Nobody cares.
Right.
You understand me? That's normal. That's what you're supposed to do. You're part of our circle. You're part of the Good Old Boys Club. When you do it for Black people, you're going to run a PR circuit on that.
Yep. And
we're going to praise you as a hero.
Yep.
And a lot of it, to me, is laziness. And that laziness goes to the lack of intentionality, because if you really was connected to the culture like that, where your money goes to will create much more meaningful impact.
Yes.
Because you'll be able to then be like, here's this leader over here, this person doing this community stuff, and we put this money in here. This is how not only that we create this one time, this, or it should be multiple times. You're doing it over years, so it should be a lot of impact, because people like Jay-Z and other people have been rich for a very long time.
Yeah.
So it's not even about what they're giving, it's about the infrastructure that they have. But if you have a person that's not from your community managing your money, not only if they're taking a fee off that money, they're taking the money that they're managing, being able to leverage that and to be able to, be able to get loans against that for themselves, right? Then that same person may come to you and be like, or you an athlete and you say, look, I have this dream. I want to start this so-and-so company, or I want to invest in this person. I see they doing some great things in the community. Your financial advisor said, I don't think that's a good idea. You know what I mean? I have a list of foundations and things of that nature I think you should pour money into. Yeah. Those are clients that he also has and know. But if you take money out for this entrepreneur endeavor because it's something you're passionate about that you've been since you was a kid, because you grew up in the hood and you understand when people have a lack of certain things, and they're looking at, well, if you take this money out, that's less money for me to manage. I can't get a fee on that. Right? And a lot of time these guys are even controlling them and telling them what they can and cannot do with their money.
Correct.
And so that's why I like the idea of us talking about and setting up more family offices within a culture so that we can control the infrastructure of our economics so that it can flow to where you don't even have to think about it and you're doing good with your money because the infrastructure that your money in is flowing somewhere that is doing good. Right? I don't think that you're probably going to be the best person in your field that got the millions and billions, and then you probably won't be the best person of knowing how to allocate those funds as well. So you need somebody that's going to be on the culture side to make sure that that capital is being flowed somewhere effectively and efficiently. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go in. You just might want to change who's managing your money. You can't be pro-Black, but you ain't got nobody managing the economics of all of this capital that you're gaining, of all of these deal flows. You're not going in and say, well, let's make sure we have in the contract that we have to make sure that we're diversifying. I know nobody like diversity anymore, but those are the things that stop Black wealth from happening, right? Yeah. Because when you can make those sort of changes, when you're a founder and you can make that contractual, now you can make sure this qualified company that otherwise would not have gotten to at least make sure that a certain percentage goes towards them. If I'm doing something in the community like a bank, and a bank is supposed to give back to the community, but a lot of times they would just take the what's the called, the citation of the fee or whatever for not pouring into that community. They don't want to. Yeah. And we allowing these things to happen, but they shouldn't. And we shouldn't support nobody who does not give back. I think that's just full play. Well, it don't matter if you like them or not. The question is, what do you give back?
Right. And let me.
Everybody does that, by the way.
Right. And let me say, this is the reason why I respect what Jaylen Brown does so much. Mm-hmm. Because he's so intelligent and he's courageous in terms of how he moves. Is he's doing something different, and there's others out there like him, but he's the one I'm thinking about because I know you guys work together, and I'd love that because it's what he's doing is he's into the idea of investing in the Black community and not looking at the Black community purely as a charity case.
Oh, for sure,
right? Like what you'll see a lot of times with a lot of celebrities is they'll, let's say they've got $100 million to allocate, they'll take 99 million. And put it into some businesses with some guys in Silicon Valley that ain't got nothing to do with our community, right? But then they'll take like 1 million, 500,000, 1%, 0.1% of that money and say, I gave to the boys club in my old neighborhood. Not every part of the Black community is a charity case. You've got Black people that can manage the money like anybody else. That can be part of the infrastructure that allows you to develop industry. The best way for me to show respect to you as a fellow member of my community is not for me to do charity for you and say, hey Keys, here's $20, man. Good luck to you, brother. Yeah. No, it's me to invest in you. Yeah. Right? To say, okay, what projects you got? Let's go acquire some real estate. Let's start a business. Maybe you hire me, I hire you, whatever it is. You see what I mean? That is the functional part of what you're doing with your economics. The reason the Black community fails is because most of us are wired to only be Black in our spare time, but we pro-white in our full time. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Think about this, right? Most Black people that work, they work for a white person. Most of us do, right? So you spend 40 hours a week, really 50 hours a week, if you add up the time you spend getting ready to work, going to work and all that, 50 hours a week, 2,500 hours a year, 25,000 hours in a decade, 100,000 hours in your life, working for other people, investing time into other people's businesses, and those businesses grow. And then when somebody says, well, why don't you do something for your own community? You say, okay, well, I got a couple hours on Saturday. I'll go donate at the Boys Club. Yeah. I got a little time on Tuesday. I'll do something in my church. So process this, right? You're giving the majority of your time to institutions that are not even in your community, and you're giving your spare time to your actual community itself. So that explains very clearly why why one area is growing, one area is not, because things you don't invest in, you're not,
it as charity.
You get no harvest when you plant no seeds. So you're planting all your seeds over here. That's why That's why corporate America is growing like crazy, right? So what has to occur, if I'm really trying to be pro-black, and I'm talking about myself right here, I said, if I really want to be pro-black, I've got to be able to position myself in a way where the majority of my time is spent doing something that directly hits to the heart of my community, right? That's where, for example, I was on the faculty of Syracuse teaching finance. I said, this was cool, but I really want to be in the trenches with my people, teaching them every day instead of this. So I had to figure out, okay, what's a business model that will let this happen? Ain't nobody going to fund something called the Black Business School. People told me to take the word black out. I was like, no, I'm going to leave it in there. Let's see if I can pull this off. And so now I wake up, I'm talking to Black people from sun up to sundown, 10, 12 hours a day, you too, right? That to me is what it looks like to make infrastructural investments. If you're talking about a celebrity, I don't understand it. How is it that I can see an artist or an athlete who was raised, you came out of a Black woman, the Black community fed you when you were hungry, they gave you credibility that you now market around the world, you're making lots of money from this, but then I go to your office and everybody managing those assets does not look like me. That's some bullshit, man. I can't go find the richest man in China. If I go in his office, I'm expecting to see nothing but Chinese people managing every piece of it because they're going to protect it. You're not going to walk into an office of the richest man in China and find, an Irishman.
Right. And you want people to understand you. You know what I'm saying? Because then they also understand your deals. They understand where you come from. They understand that a lot of times athletes, entertainers, you get this money, and then you have the transition between somebody who makes the money and somebody who can sustain the money and protect it, right? And when somebody comes from you, they're not only just looking out from your interests, they're looking out for your people's interests, your family. They understand that this is a person that has made it against incredible odds. They understand what most likely you don't know. They have a psychographic, right, to be able to look at your profile. And then from there, they can implore a level of empathy, right? Because they can put themselves in your shoes.
Yes.
So they understand your dreams, right? They understand your journey. And they understand that this money ain't just money, right? This can represent a lot of freedom for your community.
Yes.
Right? This can represent multi-generational lives changed for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have people who don't care about those things, they will allow you to burn out and make decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of these people, they're not getting access to top suite deals. They're not getting access to these private deals. Yet you know all these people, but how come they not pulling you in on the SpaceX when it was just worth billions? Mm-hmm. You understand me? How come they not pulling you in on these deals? If you're around them, then you see their name in headlines. That was just a phone call away for you. They get allocation. How come they not saying, yo, I want you in this deal? They're not trying to give you that life changing. You're coming to them with stuff. Most of the time, they're not coming to you. Sometimes it happens. You build out your own family office and then you are able to get access and things of that nature. But a lot of times we lack the infrastructure to even understand what we have and what we can do with it. When you want to invest into the Black community, right? Not give, but invest into. When we look at these new AI startups, new tech startups, I have this young guy I know from NVIDIA, man, and he sends me over some of these little private deals that be happening, and you'll be surprised at what's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of brilliance. But and as somebody I've taught about the stock market, you teach about the stock market actively. But how many of us are really bragging about these investments into Black ideas and Black businesses? How come we don't have a large venture capital firm that is seeding these ideas in our communities and then utilizing our influence, right, to run up the value of these companies? We're not being intentional enough is what I'm saying, right? Our lack of intention and our ignorance, but the reality of it is we have enough information now. We have enough people in positions. The only thing is coordination. See, I think that we think that we're dangerous to a system by saying something. They don't care about that no more. No. We're not even doing the thing dangerous enough for them to care about yet. I don't think so. It's like people still worried about if we build a town where they burn it down. They say, well, damn, at least build something for us to burn down.
Exactly.
If it stays theoretical, y'all not even giving us nothing to play with here. You feel me? Like, y'all are afraid of what we might do, so you don't do it. Right? And I don't even think that Black people are being nowhere near dangerous enough in language and finance and influence in none of these spaces. We're playing it way too small. Right? And every day I show up here, I'm reminded of two words: think bigger. We're thinking too small. We need something that requires, I need ideas that require $1 billion, $100 billion, right? Because that's how much change that they're going to seed. When we having these conversations, people going over to the UAE and you getting access to these sovereign wealth funds, but what ideas are so big that it'll change the course of history? Or are you going over there just as talent to get a check, right? A lot of times we're entering into these conversations and not even approaching it with a big enough idea, right? And not even having a big enough ask for somebody to help us and for us to help our communities because we're thinking small. We're thinking for ourselves what we think will work. And they walk away leaving. That's all you want? Sure, that's nothing. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time, they'd rather give you charity than give you investment.
Yeah.
This brother told me something. I was talking to my brother Trav here. He said there was a trick that this brother that had raised $100 million did. Henry was 10 million, 100 million. Let's say 100 million for the sake of the story. But he was on this call with these investors. And he said they don't believe in us like that.
Yeah.
So the trick was for him to raise money is that when he got on the call with the investors, he acted like the Wi-Fi wasn't working. And that means that his camera wouldn't work and they had to just listen to his voice. When they listened to his voice, the bias went away. I'm not listening to a black man, I'm listening to an idea, right? And when they just listened to the idea, he sold them every time, right? Because we have brilliant ideas, but the bias of them believing that we can be the person that executed gets in the way of saying, I'm not funding this, right? They're not taking it serious.
Yeah.
But when you force to just listen, you're like, wait a minute, that is a good idea. And we'll write you a check for that. You know what I'm saying? And even these small strategic things, right, are necessary when we're going against these biases in these systems. Because some of these people have inherent bias that somebody before them had programmed. And some of these things become hard. They might have to go through hours of therapy to get rid of their biases. But would they spend that money so they can see us clearly? No. So instead, we need to spend our money to make sure that we're seeing clearly in whichever way that we need to do that. So it's about more so being intentional and strategic as a people to get our will done. That to me is the true pro-black spirit. It's not letting nothing stop you.
I like what you said about build it so they, if they're gonna burn it down, let them burn it down, but at least build it first. And
first of all, not to cut your wisdom, I don't think they're gonna burn shit down.
Right.
Because the burning downs never stopped us. That's not what stopped Black Wall Street. What stopped Black Wall Street was the systems that they set in place. They burnt down 3 years later. We built it back up and had a parade that says we're resilient. Wasn't the burning down. People stop at that part of the story, but the continuation was later on. And the same reason that they stopped a lot of these Renaissance cities that popped up when we were thriving during their depression is because they start redlining us and they start implementing these systems. So systems thinking, right, allows us to make sure that we're not being redlined again. That's the true thing we should focus on is how do we combat systems, not this fear of some violence. We done dealt with that a million times.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point. And I know that the survival of the Black business school came down to it's me thinking very deeply about the concept of diversification as a protective strategy against systematic annihilation. And so what I mean by that is, when I first started wanting to do what I wanted to do, I was inspired by a couple scholars I've seen through the big three in my mind with Julianne Malveaux, Cornel West, and Michael Air Dyson. And I told my brother, I said, I think I want to teach Black people, but I have to do it in a different way. I said, because as soon as a Black man says something out of line, they take something from him, right? If you got a TV show, they're going to take your show. Radio, or you got a book deal, they'll take your book deal. If you sign with the Speakers Bureau, they'll cut you off from the Speakers Bureau. So what we did was, we said, okay, we got to create our own media. In fact, at that time, I was banned from CNN and Fox because I actually got in a fight with O'Reilly over Michelle Obama, actually. So it's funny we were talking earlier. I kid you not, he made a joke about lynching her, and that almost got me fired. But I was able to stand my ground because I was economically independent enough that I didn't care about losing my job. It's like, well, if you don't want to fire me, then fire me.
Boyce Watkins out there defending Michelle Obama.
Right. It's funny, right? So that was back when he first got elected, right? So here's the thing, right? So we started a Speakers Bureau. I self-published the book before. Self-publishing was easy to do. Now it's easy, but it's tough back then. And also, we had to create our own media through the internet. But the other thing that I said was when social media kind of became a thing, was I said, we can't have one YouTube channel, because if we have one channel, then they could knock that channel down. So we created like 10. We can't have one Facebook page, because they take that down. We're done. Let's create 20 Facebook pages. Also, I did not tell everybody. This is a mistake a lot of young guys make, and I would love to encourage them not to do this, is when you out here trying to always flex and show off, like, you show your broker statement, I made 100,000, da da da. I know it makes you look good, but it also makes you a target, right? I never do that, man. I'm not. They accidentally found out how much money I made. I was in the middle of controversy, so people started looking me up on Celebrity Network and all that. I don't brag about that, because if you want real power, you got to move in silence. You got to move strategically. So even when I owned 20 Facebook pages, I didn't even tell people which pages I own. It's like, no, I don't need you to know how many millions of followers we got on different pages, because if I become your enemy, then you're going to say, okay, well, let's destroy him by attacking here. They didn't know where to attack me. And that strategy came into play so many times, I can't tell you, man. We've lost several Facebook pages. We lost a page that has 600,000 followers just for no reason, because I quoted Malcolm X and they said that's racism, right? But the page was a powerful page. It was where the rapper Young M.A. actually got discovered on that page. Like, literally, she's talked about it. I put her video up, and I wasn't criticizing. She thought I was hating on her, but I wasn't hating. You know how it is. People think you're hating when you're really just pointing some out. And I said, it bothers me that our kids have to become famous, so they feel like they have to be famous by rapping about murdering each other. Like, that's not healthy to me. That's a bad culture, right? And so she took that as me hating, but I wasn't hating, because she's talented, right? But she got discovered on it. That's how strong the page was, and they took it down. The thing that saved us was I had 20 other pages, right, with hundreds of thousands of, Instagram one day. I just got a message from Facebook saying your Instagram account has been deleted. 500,000 followers gone. Now I think I'm up to 300 or something. I had to start from zero and rebuild, right? And the only thing that allowed us to survive is because I kind of knew how America viewed me. I said, if you're really out here really doing something that's really truly empowering Black people, like, so making yourself dangerous, I remember thinking nothing's more dangerous than Black people really understanding economics at a very high level. So I kind of knew it was going to happen, and I knew that they would view me almost like a terrorist, not because I really am a terrorist, but because I'm really trying to take your power. I'm really trying to teach people to be in a position where we're going to come in there and we're going to be the smartest one in the room. We're going to know what's going on, and we're going to walk away. We'll sit down and play poker. I'm walking away with all the chips. So long story short, one thing I learned about economics for sure is, and people should know this, is that economics is warfare. People are not going to fight fair with you, right? So you run around saying, well, that ain't fair. Man, nobody care about that. Life ain't fair. Like, look throughout history. Any great nation that's ever had freedom and power had to defend that against unfairness. And to me, understanding that just makes it easier. You don't spend as much time being offended that somebody tried to take you down as you spend being strategic about how to make sure you can't take me down.
Yeah.
Man, I don't have people try to cancel me and all that. I'm like, you don't even know. You will not cancel me.
Right.
Right? Because I'm resilient. I'm strategic. I've got operations happening that you'll never even know about. And you're going to wonder, why does that guy's stuff keep popping up? Well, it's because I prepared for you before you got here. Right. So I think that anybody that wants to win at anything, I would encourage them to just write it into the business plan. You got a clear plan, prepare to get punched in the face, and then ask yourself, am I going to go back to the plan, or am I just going to say, oh, they hit me, now I got to quit? If you're a quitter, you will not succeed in business, life, wealth, or anything.
Peace, family. Are you ready to build outside the matrix, to where you have a space of people that are your own tribe, that are highly aligned community of networking resources that you can see on one dashboard? The problem that I've had, and many creators have had this whole entire time, is I'm tired of dancing for the algorithm, fighting for followers that have already chosen to align with us, right? What happens when you go to different cities and you're trying to connect with people, but there's no single source of truth for that connection, right? There's no way to know who is all within, right, your database, who has which resources. You're trying to call everybody and it's scrambling. There's no organization. There's no streamlined process. I believe in creating digital nations, and those digital nations, although they may start in the cloud, they have real life activation on the ground. whether we want to create fractional ownership systems to where we buy land and all those who participate get a key to that land and get ownership within it, whether we want to build businesses or activate free lunch programs for the city and the community. Things like this have been happening for a very long time, but we now have the technology that can streamline the process. On the ZIION app, we decided to build on the ZIION platform because I wanted to create the high-level nation. But I wanted somewhere the whole world exists at once, right? And the way we set it up is you can get a passport into the world, right? I want the education to be free, and the passport, it just allows you to be able to travel and get access to these resources. Therefore, my resources become yours and yours become mine, and it becomes a space of mutual value and contribution, right? The way we're setting it up now, and I gave a breakdown about this at the last high-level conversation we did on tour, right, is that we're going to have passports and we're going to have visas. We're going to make sure that you are actually someone that is highly aligned. So therefore, you get a visa. Once we figure that you're qualified and we can build with you, that's when you're able to be qualified to get you a passport. Now, out here in this city in New York that I'm shooting in right now, there's an interesting case study, right? In the early 1800s, early 1900s, right? Over there at the Gramercy Park, I was trying to walk in, but I couldn't get in. And the guy at the gate told me that this is a private park. I thought it was a public space. I was ready to sit down. Then I read up on it and I realized that it is owned by some of the surrounding businesses and clubs, including even a synagogue. What happened is they have 39 keys. Those who participated in the ownership structure, they get access to it, right? If you don't have participation in that, then you don't get a key. And that is one of the things that we'll be doing in the nation as well. People that want to participate in some of the ventures that we have and want to build, you will be getting keys once you are joining the nation and we process these things. We're voting on what we want to do with our capital, what we want to do as a nation, what we want to do as a community. This is more than social media, right? This is a social nation, right? Right now, people are lonely, they're disconnected, and they don't want to go into the future alone, especially with all this uncertainty. So this is the solution. How do we build outside the matrix? And what's the matrix? It's systems that the machine controls. So outside their control is our alternative systems that we build. And here's the kicker. You can build on your platform as well. If you are somebody that's a leader, somebody that's creator, create your own nation. Because in the future, as everybody is democratizing tools and access to these things, the only thing that really matters is community, right? And then from that community, there's distribution. Right? And in that community, you need to have real connection. So you're focusing on your core base, not trying to find followers, because followers don't even matter, right? Because what are they following you for is what matters. You want supporters. You want people who are highly aligned with the same values and the same mission, the same vision that you are going for, right? So now you get to plant your digital flag, and now it gets to become a physical flag. You get to have your core values. You get to have your mission statement, your thesis, your manifesto, right? And then you get to find people who are aligned with what you believe, and you get to build with them. We have a whole entire map system that we're going to be building up. This mapping system is going to allow people, right, that are part of the nation to see who else is a part of the nation all across the planet. So we're planning on going, right, let's say to Iowa. And when I go to Iowa, I want to be able to just click on it. And when I click on it, I can see who's within that network. I can see what resources they have. You're going to see the high-level conversation network, which is all of these people that we've impacted and affected, right? But there's way more tentacles than just that. On social media, all you're really getting is impressions. You're getting analytics about likes, right? But you're not getting impact. I want to know the impact that I'm having on the world, and I'm sure you would too if it was available. The high-level nation is all about being able to track that metric of impact, connections, right? That circulation of that dollar. How big is your actual economy and your footprint? Because you're not an influencer, you're an economy. But nobody put it that way. So therefore, third parties are able to utilize your power because they didn't create tools for you to utilize it yourself, right? So what we're doing is creating those tools that everything exists in-house. We get to control our own world. We get to build our own world, and you get to be a part of that world as well. So you get to join, you get your passport, you get your face there, right? And we're going to be upgrading and think about what type of passport you would design for your community. And even in the future, we're going to turn those into physical ones as well. Get you access to events, get you access to retreats, get you access to the world. It's no secret society. It's an open society. You understand me? But it's closed to those who are not aligned with our goals. So make sure y'all tap in. Go to High Level Nation. comment High Level Nation below, right? And make sure that you put in the application for your visa inside the world. I'll see you on the other side. Peace.
Culture that's like rooted in a deep history.
Yes.
That's what it is. And you can feel it. And there's a lot of complexity from those spaces as well that I think people gravitate towards. The same thing with like Detroit.
Yeah.
There was a deep movement in Detroit, and now it is what it is now. But, once you kind of get into the history of it, it's interesting as hell. And then sometimes you might look at the history from the black side, but then it's all these other groups that existed. Like, I was looking at some stories. It was the early, was that World War II? The Japanese had sent somebody out there through the Black Dragon Society, and they sent this Asian man who was actually helped supporting businesses and like entrepreneurship, technology, bringing in resources. You understand me? And part of their thing is they was anti, Western imperialism. And so that's why a lot of the groups back in those days had some sort of connection to the Japanese at the time, right? Especially Marcus Garvey groups, Maddie Maud and her group. And then you look at the Ethiopian Brotherhood were being funded by the Japanese and things of that nature because they needed that influence in the Black community.
Interesting.
Right. But the thing was that we had in common with them was a shared enemy. They both wanted to see white America fall. Right. It was against so-called white supremacy. But later on, they realized that they were more for imperialism than they cared about decolonizing the world. Right. And so that's where a lot of those things break off. And then when they lost the war, that's when the Nation of Islam was able to gather a large amount of those groups that left them and was like, y'all had this promise that we was going to have this, and we was going to win World War II, and we was going to be rocking with the Japanese. And that's when Elijah Muhammad was like, nah, we just for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And just a Black nation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Wow.
You feel me? And so he was able to get a lot of that following for that Maddie Maud had at that time and other groups that had splintered and fell off. And then the people who didn't go there, a lot of them went into the civil rights era, right, style of thinking. So a lot of that, the idea of creating these systems, right, and being a part of these movements, right, from the Marcus Garvey era and all those groups that existed, either it went to the nation or they become much smaller and dispersed. And then history only really started focusing on the civil rights era when we start talking about history. We don't really talk about pre-civil rights and all the different groups that had existed before that. Yeah. And so once that gets cycled into history, then that's kind of becomes the blueprint that people operate off of. So a lot of people don't know about a lot of these connections and these allies that we tried to create partnership with as we fought this consistent war against white America.
Wow, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So that's why we don't take it as a strategy today.
Yeah.
We don't even think that we've ever had any coalitions, right? And that's just like there's been thousands of Black groups, some that during the wartime before Juneteenth, not before Juneteenth, but before the Civil War, there were groups that were creating whole entire armies where they had 20, 30,000 people signing up to go against white America. You understand me? There's always been these accords that we had in almost every category that you can think of. We've always been forming these groups and having even our own secret societies, if you will. But those things are not taught of because once that becomes a part of the protocols for our liberation, these are way more effective than a lot of the things that we do in our, right? Like I know you don't believe in voting. Right, and you had tweeted something that voting ain't shit. I'm summing it up.
I didn't say that. Well, personally, I don't participate as a Democrat or Republican. I did vote for Cornel West in the presidential election, but I don't believe in voting. I don't believe in that as a solution, especially if you guarantee your vote before you even make a decision.
So how do you then think? So what I was shifting to was our current economy, right? And as somebody who teaches stocks, I want to kind of get a financial outlook of where you seeing everything going in the world. Some people give doomsday scenarios. Some people talk about AI being a bubble and everything having to collapse at some point. We look at the conversations around having trillionaires and things of that nature. Is our current economy even sustainable on this path? Is it even connected to reality at this point?
That's a great question. No, are we
Yeah.
rolling? Okay, my bad. Um, right now, AI is it is a dominant force in the economy. Um, most traditional metrics of a bubble have been hit. There are lots of experts right now that are pretty much predicting that there's going to be a big correction in the stock market. It might look like a crash, uh, but the thing is, even if there is a crash, it does not mean that AI is still not going to be a dominant technology that drives, that drives business going forward, right? So a lot of people, perhaps incorrectly, compare it to the dot-com bubble. They knew the internet was going to be big. They were right about that. What they did not know was which companies were going to come to dominate the internet. I mean, if you go back to 2000, you would have thought it'd be companies like AOL and MySpace and stuff like that. And that ended up being wrong. But we know what the internet is right now. So it's important to be invested in AI. Even if the bubble pops, you still should be engaged with the stock market. Um, if the bubble pops, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Crashes and corrections happen all the time. But what is also happening as well is those who have heightened financial consciousness, the billionaires and now the trillionaires, are watching the investors' behavior, and they know that people will pretty much buy anything, especially if you trick them into believing that that you're going to miss out on something. So they're taking advantage of that by issuing IPOs that are questionable. SpaceX is a debatable IPO. It could have an amazing amount of value, or could it be a snake oil? Depends on which metric you use.
Do you have any strong feelings towards where it will be in the next 6 months to a year?
It's very hard to predict that. Most of the research says you cannot predict what an individual stock's going to do in the next 6 months. It's too noisy. There's too much. It's like the Spurs. Imagine the Spurs and the Knicks are tied with 3 minutes in the game. You think you can predict who's going to win, but really you don't know. You know who you're cheering for. You know what could happen. Wemby could have a great 2 minutes. Brunson could have a great 2 minutes. You don't know, right? That's what it's like trying to predict an individual stock in the next 6 months to a year. Now, if you look at a portfolio of stocks and you look at the 5, 10 years, then you can predict. And so this is where investing becomes very easy. It is almost impossible to pick, say, 20 randomly chosen S&P 500 stocks, hold them for a decade, and lose money. Almost impossible. It's very possible, though, to pick one stock and lose money. Or maybe it'll double, right? So with SpaceX, it's like this. There are certainly worse places to put money. Like, you think about it, if you take that, if you got $1,000 to invest and you say, well, I don't want to invest in SpaceX, I might lose money. But you take the 1,000, you go spend it somewhere, then you're gonna get guaranteed negative 100% return on your investment. If you put money into SpaceX, it could turn into something far less than what it is. That bubble could easily pop. If the Fed increases interest rates, if something geopolitical goes wrong, if investor sentiment starts to drop, right? Investors start becoming less confident about investing. All these things could hit SpaceX as well as a lot of the tech stocks, right? So there are a lot of things that is it a bubble? It looks a lot like a bubble, but the thing about it, though, to your point, is that there's a lot of uncertainty about what this new economy is going to look like. It could be a new regime. It could be a scenario where maybe AI stocks are actually undervalued, right? So nobody really knows. But the key idea is there are certain things you do know. One, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if you invest in SpaceX, make it, put 2% of your portfolio in there and see what happens. Number two, you reduce your risk by holding your assets over a long period of time. When you're trying to do quick flips, day trading it's very hard to make money consistently as a day trader. Very easy to make money consistently if you are a buy and hold investor. That's how Warren Buffett got $200 billion, whatever he's got. So I would say SpaceX is going to be fun to watch. It's really like that. It's like all over the place in the sense that really what you're investing in is you're investing in your confidence that Elon Musk is going to be able to execute his vision at the level that he plans. And really, here's the deal. Elon Musk could slip in the shower and die tomorrow. You know, there's key man risk there,
Do
right?
you think I think they probably got clones of him at this point.
You know, I wonder about, you know, Kanye said that Elon is Chinese intelligence. Did you see that?
Hey man, it
Or,
could be.
or Chinese AI. That's what he says.
Yeah, so I'm not into conspiracy theories about clones and things of that nature. Mostly just because I just like more evidence for my conspiracies. Yeah, I mean, I like what Dr. Wesley said. I'm a conspiracy documentarian. And we can document the evidence of the conspiracy versus just coming up with theories and ideas about things. But here's the thing. Elon Musk represents a very large economy, right? If he died today, you know, it damn near crashed the market for a little bit, you know, because most of the investment is in the belief of Elon.
Yeah.
You know, people ain't caring about the financials of SpaceX right now. They're believing in Elon's next thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think about that key man risk, that like what special things are in place if he died today. You know, like that's a lot to ride. If there was like what he had one of the single biggest days of investment in a stock with like $146 billion, something crazy like that. Like that's a lot of capital that rides on one man being alive. Right. And so if he died today, then what would happen? And then the question becomes, is he too big to fail? You know, because when we look at like Amazon got to a point where they was blowing the whistle on themselves. They over there doing interviews and talking about their own practices and how they swallowing up companies and the effects that it's having on the world and the environment. And I felt like they didn't even care for the most part because they too big to fail. Right? They damn near replaced the middleman at this point, and the infrastructure that they have set up all throughout the world and the contracts that they have with this government and the states and things of that nature. This is like, these are empires, right? So we may look at these as men. And the second part about the whole Elon thing is I think that the biggest lesson is that Elon Musk is a part of the PayPal mafia, and that PayPal mafia is a collective of companies, right? Or systems, however you want to look at them, that are interlinked, that invest in each other, that protect each other, that resource each other, etc. And that when we look at, a lot of times we start looking at these individuals, like even when we look at Mansa Musa. Sure, Mansa Musa was one of the wealthiest men in history, but the system that was behind it, right? We don't even talk about the Mali Empire, we just talk about Mansa Musa. Right? We don't talk about the system that was set up to ensure that he had control over the gold markets in the first place. Right? Because nobody talks about him being the most intelligent man ever. So how did he do it? Obviously, there were systems behind him that allowed him to do that. He had a wazir. He had somebody that was his confidant that was making sure that they are consulting him on his moves that he made. He has a council, right, of people that everything was being done through. So I think that history needs to qualify, especially if we're looking at it from a pro-Black lens. The person don't matter. The system that produced the person results is what matters, right? And we looking at Elon Musk, I have to say that the collective intelligence of that PayPal mafia is the power, right? They took over the old oligarchs, right? Because when we look at what it was at first, the old oil money and all those old industries, tech came in, right? And they went to war with old money and old systems. And now they are operating towards a world of tech feudalism, right? With these things. And they're embedded in politics in a way that the old guards never were. They're sitting at the table while the president is making decisions in front of the public with no fear of reprise whatsoever, because they also control the public sentiment, because they control the platforms in which the criticism happens on. And not only the tech platforms, but Washington Post and whatever other ones that they want. So those things, number one, give us a blueprint towards what power is. But if we're talking about the stock market, wealth, those follow innovation. Wealth follows wealth. And wealth, if everybody is seeing where money is going, and they're saying, wait a minute, if Elon Musk is a trillionaire, then that represents tech, space, AI, quantum. That's where the money is flowing. And it happens every time you get a person that reaches another level in something, right? Whether it's the first billionaire, 100 billionaire, people look at how they made their money, those industries, and they're validated by the fact that somebody became extremely successful. And in capitalism, the greatest validation of success is how much money you make. So nobody can make more money than a goddamn trillion. I don't even think $1 trillion exists, but it's just this idea because they're saying now that Jeff Bezos is closer to my net worth than he is Elon Musk. You know what I'm saying? Like,
man, that's crazy. That's true.
He got what? Elon got what? 1.5 or $1.15 trillion. That if you take off the trillion, he's still
he's still the rich. Wow, that's crazy.
It's ridiculous at this point. This stuff ain't even this.
Nuts.
This money don't exist, man. First of all,
no, it don't.
But I just want to kind of get your insights on where you think the market is going, or do you even kind of try to forecast? Yeah, I mean, how do you analyze the market as you're making decisions on what companies to invest in, and what do you see companies that people are probably undervalued, right, underlooked, etc.
My favorite area to invest now is quantum, especially now that I see Jensen Huang talking a lot about quantum, trying to sort of get in early in terms of developing that infrastructure, the picks and shovels kind of play. You see IBM, Google, a lot of companies seem to believe quantum is ahead of schedule. And then you start blending AI quantum, you're wondering like what this is going to look like. In fact, I saw the guy Google DeepMind, I can't remember his name, but he talked about before they were talking about artificial general intelligence, but there's something beyond that. I think they call it hyper intelligence or something like
keep
that.
coming up with more terms.
Yeah. So in a way, it seems like we're moving on to the next thing. I think quantum is part of that. So my strategy with quantum is I invested in a wide variety of quantum companies, from Rigetti, RGTI, there's another ETF, the ticker's QTUM, QBTIS, just a few quantum.
Quantum.
Yeah, and then there's another
Qualcomm.
one. Yeah, well, I don't do Qualcomm, but I do like IBM and Google. Google's one of my favorite companies, right?
Yeah,
and so basically, I think that's kind of the next conversation on the tech front.
I see that. I think probably, and I'm gonna let you finish your thoughts on that, but quantum, and it has to find some utility, which I think AI is probably that, or even in longevity sciences, and I think it's gonna get very weird once we get quantum actually working and they start talking about what it's doing. Like if we think AI is weird, quantum is gonna take us into literally different dimensions.
Yes.
So where a lot of things that we thought were mystical, spooky, and pseudo, we're gonna figure out are real. And we were not gonna know why, because the quantum computers are going to be able to do things that we may not understand. It's gonna be a black box problem with quantum as well, where AI can do things but we don't know how. Ginseng talks about AI building the next AI, right? They don't know how the AI builds the AI. AI is building these chips at such a small microscopic level, right, that you may have a chip this size of your finger, but they're operating on a whole nother dimension, and they're using these lasers to then create it through these different processes. And I think people don't understand the technology shift that has already happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that quantum and maybe long-term outlook of fusion, because you need an infinite source of energy. And if we ever figure out fusion, I think we enter a different civilizational period, right, as human beings on the planet, where we just have complete free energy. I'm not talking about Tesla, right? I'm talking about like fusion, where we creating our own sun. And I know China is playing a lot with that. And if you kind of look at the global field of the quantum race, because it's quiet, but it's happening and it's being funded from Israel to Japan to China to Russia, everybody is playing their part in this quantum race. Then you have AI, AGI, as you talk about hyper general intelligence, where they won't even release their Mythos model because they believe that it's too dangerous. Now we have to imagine ChatGPT 4.6 or 8 is here, whatever the hell it's called, or 5.5, I think. What happens when we are ChatGPT 8? What happens when we are at whatever Mythos, or what happens 2 models after that? So, as much as I enjoyed this conversation that we have about, pro-blackness and all of that, I'm deep into futurism, right? Because I think that we're so past the past that we can't really see it. And this is why when we talk about Elon and SpaceX, it's hard to determine what the future of something going to be, because typically we use past cycles, right? And if we're using past cycles, that means that those cycles are similar enough right? That we can predict human behavior, right? And economic behavior based on that. But this cycle has so much complexity in it that it takes a life of its own. And then there become new factors where AI is just not a question of innovation and technology and investment. The utility of it, right, can fundamentally rewrite the script of how human beings interact, or how markets interact. Because now we got prediction markets, we have stock markets. What new markets will even come after that, right? And I don't want just you from the finance, but as a professor, because you're teaching the next minds of the future to how to develop a level of consciousness so no matter what future is on the outlook or the horizon, they can produce value and have a sense of self-worth and understanding. So I really kind of want to get, if you could kind of get into your own imagination and kind of leapfrog of, based on what you know, if there's a way to you kind of synthesize what is the future in the next 10, 20 years?
That's a great point, man. Here's where I'll start. You're right about this being a world that's different from any world we've seen before. I hear Elon, for example, talk about things happening that just seem pretty unbelievable when you listen to them, and it's impressive. But then I ask myself basic questions, and I say, well, if y'all really have figured out as much as you have, then why couldn't we fix my mother's cancer? Why did she die? Why couldn't you have some nano pill she could take that will make the cancer go away? Why can I go outside and still find blind people, disabled people? You know what I mean? And so my point is to say that I think that there's certainly, the world certainly has changed. It's going to keep changing. But maybe we're not as brilliant as we believe that we are, right? Like, it reminds me of how, I don't know the exact story, but how they wanted to close down the patent office in like 1908 because they said everything that's been invented that never could be invented has already been invented, right? Which is hilarious now, right? And I wonder how hilarious we're going to look 100 years from now when people are like, wow, those people in 2026 really thought they were on the cutting edge or something, right? So I say that to say maybe, even though the world's going to change like it always has, maybe it's changing faster than it has in the past, without a doubt. New rules apply. Maybe there's some old rules that would still help you survive in this new world. So is that I'm going to go teach at Morehouse this fall, and so the approach I will take in terms of talking about the future is to say, for sure, one thing we know for sure is that the way you did stuff in the 1980s and 1990s, you cannot do that now, right? Use the old methods, you're going to get left behind. But then in the 1990s, you shouldn't have approached the world the way you would have in the 1960s. The world is always changing. Now it's changing a little faster, and we acknowledge that. But here's the thing. I believe certain ideas will always apply. Thinking carefully about your next move will always make a difference. What you know is not nearly as important as your capacity to take in new information, because the world is changing in that way. So don't focus just so much on shoving a bunch of knowledge in your brain. Learn how to learn. Learn how to and commit yourself to that, right? So part of knowing how to learn is committing yourself to taking the time to learn. Because you and I both know these new technologies are coming out. There's a lot of people who ain't even paying attention.
Man, that's the first course I ever bought online was learning how to learn.
Really? Oh, that's hilarious.
And so every time I teach something, the first thing I go through anytime is learning how to learn.
Boom.
And those tools, and now like those, I've expanded, right, my tool set when it comes to teaching how to learn how to learn. I have so many different ways. But the first was just diffuse versus focused thinking. Right? And understanding the way our brains work and how we gather information. Then kind of individualizing the way your brain works, because we also have like a generalization when we study things, not a customization that's tailored towards your specific cognitive experiences. So the diffuse thinking was more so like a large flashlight. You're trying to discover something in a dark warehouse and you want to know what things are. You come in there with a large flashlight and be like, oh, I see what's mostly in here, books, right? Then the focused thinking is like going in there with a laser. You know, now you can focus on what's in the book, right? You focusing on the small details. And a lot of times when people learn, they do it the opposite. They're sitting there trying to will and focus on something they have no understanding on, so they're studying the details. And nothing is really getting into their brain, right? Because they haven't built up enough understanding at a high level first. Well, let me just get a general understanding of what this is about. Then let me concentrate and focus on the details and start filling them in, start building up this scaffold, right, in my mind so that now I have all these places I can connect to, right? And so when I teach that and people learn how to learn, the process becomes easier. So therefore, people who take courses can actually apply them because they're not feeling insecure about their inability to learn, because a lot of people have learning disabilities. And so I think the learning how to learn piece and that cognitive fluidity, right, is very important. And I think that's the part, and I'm super glad that you went there. And the other part I kind of want to challenge you on is capitalism is the reason a lot of times that we don't move forward. We have inventions shelved that could change the world today, but can we make money off of it tomorrow? If you cure something, then you can't prescribe something, right? Because how do you create a model to where you can get paid 1,000 times versus get paid once? You can only cure something one time, right? Yeah. But you can prescribe somebody medicine, which is essentially a subscription, right, to taking care of your disease. It's not healing, it's not curing. And so it's more so capitalism, fiduciary duties, right? They will go buy whole companies that are innovative. We might hear about them for a second, and then Google or one of these places buy them and then shelve it. So it doesn't compete with their technology. Look at iPhones. Are they the best phones in the world? No. They're best marketed. And when somebody competes with that technology, they buy them up. Why we're not utilizing technology from China? Look at our cars, right? We can go get much cheaper. Not when I say cheaper, I mean cost-wise. But competitive-wise, those cars are much better than the ones you go into the lot paying $60,000 to $100,000 for. You go to China, pay $20,000, and you got something that's comparable. But we won't allow the China market to come over here and take over, right? So when you really got to kind of look at, because you got to look at the world, right? The whole globe. If I'm an alien, I want to look at what exists, right, in the files of humans. Oh, they have this tech. I go to the CES shows, and you go look at what them South Koreans got over there, and they technology will blow you away. They'd be like, look, this is our new diabetes medicine. It's essentially a cure that people can take. And it's light years ahead of wherever the hell we using over here, but they saying, we actually can't sell it because they won't allow us to bring the tech over to America. So they're usually selling to these global investors. Or somebody has to go lobby to change laws so that this thing can now be put into place. So I don't think it's a lack of human innovation, invention. I think that capitalism stalls progress so that it can make profit on what's pre-existing. So if I'm a goddamn pharmaceutical company, no cures exist, only medicine.
Now, I do agree with that. And I think that's not only that, is that the reason why I don't want to be a capitalist is Americanized capitalism is especially brutal. America, we rank near the top of the world in the ability to make money, but we rank the lowest amongst industrialized countries when it comes to quality of life, mental health, physical health, relationships, family broken down, all that, because everybody is praying to the god of capitalism. Even look at the debt levels of consumers. Student loan debt, all-time high. Car loan debts at an all-time high. Mortgage loan debts at an all-time high. Credit card debts at an all-time high because people are trained to spend until you go broke, and then you got to just keep going to work. So we push the capitalist machine because we are kept barely above the line of financial desperation, and we feed the beast, right? And the beast does not care about people. And that's why, when to your point about the healthcare system, we should not have capitalism in the healthcare system because of what you just described. Capitalism should not be involved in politics. That's why your billionaires and now your trillionaire runs the government, right? And this is not healthy because you need to have spaces for the things that don't make money, like taking care of your senior citizens, make sure your kids get educated, programs for the poor. You need all these things. And you don't get that because capitalism looks at things and says, is that profitable? Nah, nope, that's not profitable. I'm gonna abandon that, but I'm gonna go invest in this, and it could be some drug that causes people to die. It's, the whole opioid situation, right? Or you look at toxic hip hop music and the destruction that was done there. Capitalism does not care how it builds an economy. It is a beast that is never full and is always looking for ways to make to have more than whatever it's at. It's infinitely greedy, right? So generally, what I'd say is, you're right, the capitalism stalls progress. I also think about the aviation industry. I believe airplanes would be far more advanced if it wasn't for the fact that even when the Wright brothers kind of came up with their little work and subsequent work after that, they couldn't even collaborate to make better airplanes because everybody had these patents. And then they would sue each other so much and they spent so much time in court that they didn't have time to actually innovate and make better airplanes. So capitalism, you're right. Capitalism is not, John Hope Bryan. I like John. He wrote a book called Capitalism for All. And I said, man, I like you and I like your book, but I'm not capitalism ain't for me, right? Mm-hmm. But then I think what he meant was that conscientious capitalism can be okay. I think we got to get past this false ideology that anybody who makes a profit and makes a dollar must be evil. That if you define money as evil, then you'll never have any money. And then what's going to happen is the capitalist machine is going to control you anyway. Mm-hmm. You're going to be serving the capitalist. You're going to be fighting capitalism on the weekends, but then you got to go to work on Monday. You'll be contributing to it on Monday. So ultimately, economic strength and economic power can protect you in a capitalist society, and it can give you the ability to pursue a meaningful agenda. But there has to be an element of consciousness with it. And in fact, that's why, like every morning I teach the students in the Black Business School, and I call it financial consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, yeah, money is power. Let's acknowledge that. Let's figure out how to get some, but then let's be conscious so that when you get the power, you don't do things with it that either harm people, or harm yourself, or just make the world into a worse place than it was before. I'm not here to create more money Mayweathers. I love Floyd, but I wish I could talk to him and say, come on, man, look at what you could actually do.
Yeah, we need more Muhammad Ali's.
Boom, there you go. But here's the thing. You need more Muhammad Ali's for sure. I'm a Louisville guy. Muhammad Ali's my second cousin, actually. So you say Ali, man, you got me going. Love Ali, but I also believe you should critique everybody that you love. Critical thinking, right? He's my number one person on the planet, right, with Malcolm X. But I look at his life, and I don't know if he was trained to have the respect for money that he could have and should have had. He lost a lot of money through a lot of mistakes with women, or just going in, just giving it away, because there's something in his head that says, if I care about you, I'm going to just give my money away. I'm going to be generous. That's wonderful. Generosity is beautiful. But the problem is that at that point, you're destroying your financial security and you're kind of ruining your legacy. Next thing you know, you're boxing at the age of 50 because you're trying to get out of debt. And we saw what the consequences of that was. What made the difference for Ali was he married a young woman from Louisville, Lonnie, who got an MBA from UCLA. She understood the value of his brand. She knew that Ali was a wealthy man, even when he had no money. She saw the wealth. The wealth was his influence, his power, his reputation. She helped restore that brand and get the licensing in place and all this other stuff. And I feel that when he died, his legacy was intact at a level that it never would have been if he had never met this woman, right? So it's to me, it's a balance thing, right? The Money Mayweather thing, that's way too much. Come on, man. We don't need to know that you got 37 cars that look alike, right? The Ali thing, it reminds me of a lot of athletes that go broke, not because they're bad people. Like, we think that they go broke because they throwing money up in the strip club, and some of them do, but a lot of them go broke because they're being so generous and they're taking care of so many people. And my question would be, what makes you think that the only way you could take care of your loved ones is by doing charity? LeBron takes care of his homeboys, his best friends, by investing in them, right? So therefore, he's pouring into them. They pour back into him. That is an ecosystem. That's what you want, right? Me helping you does not mean I have to deplete myself. It means I invest in you, and you invest so that I can get a return on investment, right? And then vice versa, right? And to me, that model makes more sense because you're not creating superheroes and victims. You're creating something where everybody's a hero and everybody backs each other up. And that is how you develop economic strength.
So I was thinking of this as you were speaking. like, as I remember, I did a high-level conversation with my brother Keenan. We was talking about family offices and just families and the origin of them and how they formed and the responsibilities, coordination, and families being microcosms of nations. So you talked about this, about individuals that exist within the family. Those individuals form that family. That family then connects with other families. Those families then form tribes. Those tribes connect with other tribes, right? Then they form nations. And then those nations connect with other nations. They form empires, right? And so the structure of a family absolutely matters. But specifically, when you go down to like J.D. Rockefeller was famous for his family office that he set up. Now it's at a point where you're talking about his descendants that are third, fourth generation in, and when they want to go borrow money, they have to then go to the family's bank. Now, they're not going to automatically give you a line of credit or a loan for $10 million, but they may start you off with $100,000. You do right with that, now you increase, right? Then they can come to $1 million. You do right with that, now they're like, all right, I think you good fiduciary for your money, right? And a good steward of money. Now we got $100 million. But then that's being determined by a board that's already set up. But this is a family structure. So I think about this idea is that more so it's our lack of infrastructure, right? Why we don't do these things. Because I'm sure that that money that's being allocated from LeBron that's going to his homie's investment is through his family office that's then being set up to allocate that, right? And that's risk adverse, I'm sure, as well, the way he has his funds set up. So it's more so thinking about that from an early level to where if you're a family, creating that family bank, right? And how can that child then think about how do I earn some of the family's money, right? So that you don't feel entitled to it, but how do I earn it? Yep. So if I'm going to college, right, and now I feel like I want to be an entrepreneur, how do I then, like Jeff Bezos, come and present my family a business plan and say, based on what we have in the bank, would you all consider investing in this, right? Same thing with friend circles, if you will, right? In that circle, is there any infrastructure to where you can present something to each other, right? No personal feelings involved. It's just saying that, look, I have an idea. I know you have a fund for this. Will you invest in this? Like, we are not that intentional, and we're not setting up the infrastructure that allow us to succeed. I think it's the infrastructure issue that's the bigger problem, right? And that solve is just saying that, okay, and this is where I always like the idea of like Web3, even though it didn't deliver on all the promises, right? But the ability to use that technology as an infrastructure for those things exist, right? To create pools and to have money in escrow and to create these contracts that can be automated if a person actually holds up their end of the deal. Like, these things allow us to start doing business with each other, right? And thinking about the business that we're doing with each other. Because a friendship is still a level of partnership, right? We are in business with each other, right? Because we can affect each other's business. A friend compromises you in a way, now that you're compromising, you're the key person in your business, that affects your business, right? Every relationship we have is business. Business is the activity of life. But the way we think about business, we think about it only in like this Western rigid way. So we don't think it extends to all relationships in our lives, right? And really you want to have all healthy relationships because they will affect your business, right? That's why you ask somebody about what's going on in their life, and why you all up in my business? You know what I'm saying?
That's funny.
But are we managing that business correctly, and are we really looking at that as business?
That's a great point, man. You said so much there that I thought was profound, and so let's grab onto what you said about infrastructure. The one interesting thing about infrastructure is, let's say you say to somebody, hey, this is how the Rockefellers manage their money with the family office, and they protect their wealth through generations, and they were good at it. That's why the Vanderbilts went broke. The Rockefellers, their wealth grew. The first challenge you have is a lot of people just don't know how to do that. Right? Because we go to school. This is why I'm not a fan of public school. You go to school to learn how to get a job. Everybody knows how to fill out a job application and do an interview. Nobody took a class. Very few people take classes on how to form a family office with infrastructure and all the things you talk about. And that's up to us, right? If we want our people to know these things, then we have to be the ones to jump in there and do it. Ain't nobody else gonna do it, right? Second thing to that as well is confidence and self-esteem are essentially important for you to even believe that your name and your family is even worth that level of energy from you, that level of structure. It's very easy for me to hold up an iPhone and say, is Apple a valuable company? People say, oh yeah, you work at Apple. You show up, you wear the uniform, you got the, you do your job from 9 to 5. You're very focused because you have a respect for that institution without remembering that Apple was a concept that Steve Jobs came up with in his garage, right? But you see that institution and you say, yes, this is something worth protecting. I can't be sloppy with this. I have to put energy and time and attention into that. But then when it comes to your last name, it's like, well, I ain't nothing but Billy Johnson. That don't mean nothing. Mm-hmm. Well, part of the reason it don't mean nothing is because you don't think it means nothing, right? But if you tell your son, hey, son, you are a Johnson, and all the Johnson kids, and I get with a beautiful black woman, I say, I'm going to have 5 kids with this woman, and we're going to pour into these kids thousands of hours of investment, not money, time and love. That's the big investment. It's not, the money comes later. You invest the time, love, and attention. Next thing you know, you got these little Johnsons that are all following behind dad and listening to what he has to say, right? Like LeVar Ball, for example, right? What he did with his sons, Joe Jackson, right? You're Jackson. This means something. The Rothschilds, the way the Rothschild family became powerful was the father told the sons, okay, nobody cares about the name Rothschild, but we do, and we're going to make sure the world knows that name. So he sent one son to France, another son to Italy, another son to England, and said, we're going to take this name around the world, and we're going in 100 years, the name Rothschild is going to mean something, and we know when people hear that name, they see power. Somebody has to make the initial investment, and to do that, though, you have to have somebody that forms the core that's willing to love the ugly baby, meaning that raggedy little business that they making a nickel. Somebody's willing to go down with the ship, meaning I'm invested in this thing because this is just who I am, and I can't. There's nothing out here that I could be invested in more important than that. Everybody that talks about forming a professional sports leagues needs to go and study how the NFL was founded. When the NFL first got founded, you could buy the New York Giants for $100. They had worthless little teams. The Chicago Bears, oh, that's $50, right? Somebody had to make a conscious decision to say, okay, this investment I'm making in this institution, this system, is more important than anything else I could be doing. So you offer me a good job, I ain't got time for that. I'm pouring into this, right? Somebody had to do that, right? And so that's how you get the NFL. So what I would say to people is what you said about developing the infrastructure and having just the respect for yourself and the respect for your name and the respect for your family to internalize, and this is psychiatric work in my opinion. This ain't something that's going to happen overnight. You got to really conclude that what I'm doing right here, right now is more important than anything else I could be doing. I had to go through that exercise with myself. So what happened was I said, okay, I'm not going to spend my time trying to chase around important people so I can feel like an important person, because proximity to power is not the same as actually having it. I said to myself, I'm going to value my time when I start working on whatever I'm working on to make sure people hear the name Boyce Watkins and it means something. I ain't got time for nothing else, right? I ain't got time. Ain't no job more important than that. I'll talk to you later. As far as I'm concerned, sitting here working on what I'm doing is more important than me sitting next to Barack Obama. That's how I literally conditioned myself to think. And I said, because if I pour enough value into what I'm doing and if I do it right, then others will see the value that's there and they're going to come to me, right? And who knows, maybe that's part of the personality disorder I told you, where I had this, dismissive, avoiding attachment style. So I was always extremely introverted, extremely sort of almost a little bit like a loner, but that was the benefit of that. So here's what happened. I just poured thousands of hours into my work. I said, I'm just going to make this shit so good that people are going to hear about it far and wide. They're going to wonder, who's this guy in Syracuse? What's he doing? Next thing I know, my assistant's like, Tyler Perry's on the phone. He wants to talk to you. Okay, cool. We talk for a minute. Minister Farrakhan reached out. He'd like to, wow, I love Minister Farrakhan, right? So got to know Al Sharpton, whoever the person was, right? And it to me, it was like, I would encourage everybody to understand that most of what you need to be successful in business and life and everything else really starts with you understanding what value is, what worth is, what an asset is. The thing I studied in my doctoral program was asset pricing. How do you know what something's worth? And one thing I truly believe is that value and worth is a spiritual concept. It's as much a spiritual concept as it is a financial concept. If you believe you are worthless, then it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why? Well, because the things you see as worthless are things you're not going to protect. You're not going to invest in those things. You're going to give them away easily. Think about it. Think about little girls that have no self-esteem, no self-worth. What do? They give themselves away easily, right? So, so I would say, when you're looking for that wealth, just realize that your gold is buried in your own damn backyard. One of the problems with black people is that we're trained to believe that until you're acknowledged by other people with a fancy job or some label on your ass or whatever, you ain't nothing but a nigga. You ain't nothing but a nigga until white people see you, right? Well, that right there means you're disrespecting the wealth that God gave you. God made you a millionaire. If he gave you a black woman that loves you, you're already wealthy. If he gave you children that honor you, that's wealth, right? How do I know? Well, it can be proven mathematically. Why do you think they're going to hire your kids and pay them all this money to go to jobs? Because you're sitting on this wealth. But if you're just looking for love in all the wrong places and you spend the world chasing something that was right in your backyard, then you're kind of missing it, right? You think the battle is out there with everybody else. Really, it's internal. So I would say, if somebody said, well, what's the first step I should take to be able to do these things and to have this wealth? I would say start looking inside. You are valuable. You have to find the value, invest in it, build it and grow it. And then over time, you can add in other strategies. But if you don't do that first thing first, then other stuff ain't gonna matter.
I agree. Are you MAGA?
Am I what?
MAGA.
MAGA?
Yeah.
Oh, hell no. Well, who said that? No. Where'd that come from?
I gotta ask you the left field questions. No, I only ask the question because the way you break down finances and sometimes the way you talk about Donald Trump, it sometimes sounds favorable, right, on some of the things that he do. So I never had the opportunity to ask you what your actual position is on like Donald Trump as a man, like the MAGA movement itself.
Okay. I followed Trump for a long time. You know, I followed him 30 years ago before he got into politics. Over the years, he was just known as a rich guy from New York. That's why you have all these pictures of him with rappers and stuff like that through the years, because they would rap about Donald Trump. So he had a lot of, black friends or whatever. So when people are saying like, oh, he's 100% racist, he 100% hates black people, I'm like, what are you talking? I'm not saying he loves black people. And we shouldn't even care about that. We should love ourselves. But, when Michael Jackson was going through his shit, Trump went out of his way to defend and support Michael Jackson, right? It doesn't make him pro-black. It just means that you're trying to make things black and white when they're not. It's more nuanced, right? You talk to Judge Joe Brown, he talks about a time where Donald Trump loaned him, I think it was like $1 million or something, because he was having a business issue, right? Does that mean Trump cares about all black people? No, right? I think that politics makes us frame people black and white. I don't look at it that way. If you ask me, describe Donald Trump, I would say he should not be president because he doesn't have the demeanor of a president. He's not presidential. You can't be cussing people out on Twitter and all this stuff. And then also the war in Iran was a terrible mistake because that shows he's being controlled by the Zionists. Third, he started fighting with his closest allies. When he started fighting with Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and all that's not even strategic at that point. I don't know what his agenda is. So there's that, right? Politically, it is what it is. I talk about it more so that from a frame point of saying, rather than me judging whether I like him or not, because he doesn't care if I like him, I don't care if he likes me, let's just pay attention to his behavior and let's notice some things about him. He's a better businessman than people give him credit for. He's had a jumbo jet for 30 years. People know those jets cost like $10,000 an hour to fly. He was flying a jumbo jet 30 years ago. So stop telling me he's just a terrible businessman or that he's just completely stupid and doesn't know how to acquire power. He's the most powerful man on the planet right now. You don't get that by accident, okay? However, is he ethical? I don't think so. I think he's dishonest. I think that he's been corrupt for a very long time. Remember, one thing Donald Trump did, I studied the Trump family going back 100 years, like how he got that power, because I believe you study your adversaries or your competitors. I view Trump as a competitor. Not as an enemy per se or a friend, just as competition. Like, okay, one day my son, my grandson, whatever, is gonna have to compete with the Barron Trumps of the world. So I say study the opposition and learn how they got the power that they have so you can use it for whatever purpose you want. So with Trump, one thing he did was when he was 28 years old, he bought a $400 million hotel. I would like to see young black men be able to do the same thing, right? So rather than getting caught up in your feelings about how you feel about him and being mad about him, I don't think that is masculine behavior. I think you study that and you say, okay, what happened in that family to even put a 28-year-old in the position to buy a $400 million hotel? The corruption part comes into play, though.
So what did happen before you get to the corruption?
Yeah, well, if you go back 100 years, Donald Trump's father, Fred, Fred's father died when he was 13. Fred used to be a carpenter and fix houses for rich people in New York. Well, one day he came to the epiphany that, instead of me fixing rich people's houses, I should own some of these units. So he went from being a worker to being an owner. Well, next thing you know, he did well in the New York real estate market. So by the time Donald was born in about 1946, Fred was doing pretty well. By the time Donald was 25, about 1971, his father was able to give him like $20-something million and say, here you go, son, go take over the world, right? So what that meant was, his father's decision years before to go from being employee to being boss allowed his son to have a freedom that let him thrive instead of just surviving. So at a time when everybody else is struggling to get a job, trying to pay off student loans, Trump's over here trying to buy a $28 million hotel, or $400 million hotel. I say that to black people. I say, instead of sitting around talking about how mad you are about this person, ask yourself, how do I put my child in a position where they are financially free and aware enough to be able to make moves in their 20s as opposed to simply trying to survive? Basic idea. Think about it like this. The average used car note in America is $500 a month. If you have a newborn baby, and let's say you love your child as much as you love your car, which I hope a good parent does, you take the same $500, you put it in the S&P 500 index fund. You don't even know how to pick stocks. Just pick stocks in the S&P 500. You can literally close your eyes and just randomly pick stocks. You do that for 5 years, you got about $35,000 to $40,000. You do that for 10 years, you got $100,000. 20 years, you got $300,000. 25 years, you're talking about almost $500,000. So now your son is not a struggling black man barely getting by. He's a black man that's got $500,000 in the bank. Any person, black, white, green, or yellow, that has $500,000 in the bank ain't got to work for nobody. So all the energy he would have spent struggling to get out of student loan debt or find a way to survive, he can now spend that time as a hunter going out into this society and making things happen, right? He's able to navigate his environment. He's not a product of his environment anymore. His environment becomes a product of him because somebody had a plan for him, right? So to me, I'm not saying Trump is a wonderful person. I don't care about that stuff. I know that, or better yet, that's another conversation, in my opinion, what you think about his policies. I look at it as, okay, this is the competition. If you're the Spurs or the Knicks, you're not, you can be mad that Wemby's 7'5", but that's not going to make him shorter. You got to figure out how to score, right? How do we play defense against a team like that? How do we score on a team like that? And what gets lost is if you're sitting on the sideline just whining because they cheated or he's too good or he takes the ball every time I dribble it, you're never going to win a championship like that.
I think the pushback that people may have of looking at it is, I seen a quote that says, white people don't have to support each other because they already have a system that supports them. So it's like I don't have to think about supporting a white business if I'm a white man. Right? Because the system itself is already set up in a way that is going to be beneficial for individuals that consider themselves white. There's a reason why even Asians and people have fought literally to be described as white coming into this country because they understand the privilege that comes along with that. And I do think that white means anti-blackness, just inherently in the root of why the term was created in the first place, right? Which is anti-pro-blackness more so than it is anti-black. White means anti-pro-black, right? Because if being black or pro-black is about our own ability to assign our destiny and have autonomy, control our communities, our banking, our institutions, and things of that nature, well, white was created because black people were growing in numbers, right, and trying to form coalitions so that they could have more rights and freedoms in this country. And so then you co-op all these groups into one and say, hey, we would design privileges and rights for you as long as you come under this white thing, right? And you'll be able to win in society above black people. right? So that's why when people say pro-black doesn't mean anti-white, it's not necessarily true, right? Because being pro-black does mean anti-white. Doesn't mean I'm anti-Caucasian. It's different. But white as a designation of a race of people who have a legal framework that is set up for people that mark on that paperwork white. There's a level of bias when that passed through a system and you mark black versus when you marked white. There's a different system that's set up for when you mark Native American and Indian, right? When you mark Asian. All those things matter, right? And so then the question becomes is that there's a, level of the privilege don't even matter, because in this conversation we're purely talking about the willfulness of an individual and how they navigate a system, even if the system is beneficial to them starting off. There's many people who never got to this point, right? Then you have people who have systems that at this point in time we could probably look at and say the systems that are against us don't matter as much as the systems that we now have that are for us. And what I mean by that is purely the reason why I look at technology, right, and the democratization of access and resources and things of that nature. Doesn't mean that the existence of these systems at the highest level, right? It's the reason that Trump fired all the black people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a clear example of a system cleaning house and saying that whatever advantages you are able to get and navigate and pull yourself up by your bootstrap, we're taking that away from you because we are actively resisting, right, your growth, your climb, right, and your advancement for yourself and your people, right? So that matters, because a person that may have been working in the White House that went through years of schooling, connections, fraternities, every possible thing that they can do that leads them up there, somebody gets in there and says, well, because you black, we don't want you here, right? And there's not much that they can do about that whatsoever, right? That's anti-black because it's not pro-black. It's not allowing that person to exist, right? And not even having to think about whether they black or not. So when I think about Donald Trump, and I think about any Elon Musk, right? Dad on in the Emerald mine coming from South Africa. If you find me black men whose fathers were billionaires and multi-deca millionaires, centimillionaires, however you want to call them, and they become very successful, I'm not going to be surprised, right? And then I also can't really look at that life and subscribe the lessons that come from it because of the pre-existing circumstances that were for them that were out of their control. First, when I look at a black man, I'm looking at the pre-existing circumstances that are against you, that are out of your control, that you had to swim against the tide. Yeah. He had to swim with the tide and not fuck it up.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
True.
That's different. So that's where I can see your breakdown of frameworks, systems, and institutions to find the lessons of how do we now assign that privilege to our children moving forward, right? That's where the separation of the individual who are participating in the system versus the system itself, in a way that when I look at J.D. Rockefeller creating a system, I'm not thinking about him as a human being, but just the system, the intellectual property of that system itself, and whether that's valuable to us or not.
Yeah, I think the answer to a corrupt or unfair system, if you can access it, is to find a better system or build one, right? I think that in America, any black man who fully commits himself to this system is really going to have a difficult time. You know, you try to climb uphill with flat tires against the wind, you know, and so really, it's in terms of specifically with black men, I believe every black boy should be trained on the skill sets required to build your own systems, whatever that looks like. Yes. Even if it's a small system, right? It doesn't have to be a major corporation, just enough of a system that gives you enough autonomy to feel good about your life on a daily basis. And we don't talk enough about that. You know, we get fed a lie when we're children. They give us the lie of equality and integration when we're kids. And you really believe, okay, if I go to the same university as the white girl, get the same degree as the white girl, then I'm going to get the same opportunities as a white girl. So then when you get into the world and they treat you different because you black, you get surprised. I've seen people get shocked.
But then that's your fault.
Right.
The idea that you're surprised actually shows your ignorance and your unpreparedness to understand the world that you're in. Anytime you're a so-called minority and you have a people that are in a dominant position, then you have to understand you're going against the grain. Obviously, there's a current standard. The standard is these are the people that benefit largely from the way this institutional system is set up. I'm trying to advance against that standard, right? And so that system then fights back. Yeah. And so if there was a system to where, let's say you grow up in a civilization, you're a white man, and there's a dominant black society, right? And you're trying to advance your people in it, that system is going to fight back against you. They may not even thought about you at first, but the moment you start entering, wait a minute now, do we want white people in here? You know what I'm saying?
How did you get
do
here?
We want Asians? And you would automatically think that at first you don't have to because it's just y'all. But when other people integrate within that system, that's when you start saying, wait a minute, this feels like a threat against people who look like me. Like when I was in Japan, I think it was my favorite place I ever traveled. But then at some point in time, you realize like it's not enough people who look like me to make me feel comfortable. You all right? So like I literally enjoy the hell out the place, but when I go to Ghana, I feel safer because there's people who look like me. Yeah. Right? I feel more at peace and more at calm. And it's probably no issues with the actual Japanese whatsoever, but we want mirrors around.
Yes.
You know, there's no we want to remind ourselves, right, and see our reflections. And those spaces validate us to say, man, people of my same values and my ethnic background are around me. That's a level of protection. That's a level of safety. Yes. And then when people that enter those spaces, survival kicks in. Outside forces, foreign things I'm afraid of. Wait a minute. Let me hold them back, right? Let more of my people in instead. Even though that person may have no, intentions negative towards you whatsoever, they literally just want to take care of their family. Yeah. Right. And so a lot of time what we're dealing with is that of people not wanting to give up the power of being in a dominant position. Yeah. Right. And the fear that they feel from a waning population, right, and a decrease of power, lack of influence, right, lack of that physical presence, lack of that identity being feared, right, the mythos of who they are being shared and being sacred. And so now they're trying to reposition themselves with these stories. While we see the Odysseus story coming out, this is when white men started to share stories around the world. That story is a representation, right, of white America sharing their myths. Everything that's Greek is a fucking lie for the most part. The yogurt ain't even good. You understand me? But we talk about Zeus and the rest of these fools as if they were real. When we can literally go look at ancient Kemet and find the real gods. So we can understand the insecurities that come along with that, right? White and when we look at what neocolonialism and colonialism did to Africa, we can understand what happens when we allow people to come in and co-opt our spaces. The difference is that black people don't have a history of colonization, right? And so their fears is more so saying that we made you like us, now we're afraid of ourselves that exists within you, right? And we think that you are better than us in ways of things that we cannot do, right? You guys can do sports. You guys can do culture. You guys can do entertainment and sing. Like you are intrinsically good at things we can never compete at, right? And typically the reason we're good at those is because the rules are not rigged. When the rules are fixed, we're going to win, right? So anytime you allow us to compete in a space where the rules are fixed, we're going to outwork you, outpace you, we're going to beat you, right? Because that's how we work. So that's what they fear. So it's like, let us just actually kick you out because there's no way that we can prove that we're better than you when you get an equal opportunity.
Well, you're right. One time I was in a poker tournament. I like poker. I don't like gambling, but I like poker. It's a great game of psychology, strategy, and math. And so I was in this tournament, and I we're going along, and I ended up at the final table, and it was me against this white woman. I had 95% of the chips. Her stack was like that. I was about to wipe her out, right? And I had stuff to do, and there was some money involved in winning. And I said, I don't want to keep playing. I said, how about we just split the prize down the middle, right? Or I said, how about we just split it? You cool with a chop? And she was real happy. She was like, yeah, of course, right? And there's some guy who said, well, technically, because you have 95% of the chips, you should get, we should do the percentages. I said, no, don't worry. Let's just do 50-50. What do you think? 50-50 works? She's like, yeah. Well, so here's the thing, though. I was really generous with her in that moment, and I was giving her power that she did not have. I could have wiped her out, right? But I only did it under a couple circumstances. Here are circumstances that, if they had occurred, I would not have been generous. One, if I really needed the money, it wasn't a lot of money. That it was, it was some money, but it wasn't. We're blessed. You and I make money, so I was like, she looked like she really needed it. So, right. So if I really needed that money, I would have took every penny that was coming to me. Secondly, the other way I wouldn't have been fair to her is or generous with her, is if somebody had said, it's either you or her. Either you're gonna get paid or she's gonna get paid. It can't be both.
Right. Self-preservation.
Right. So, in a way, the challenge for race in America is, in many cases, the reason that people will treat you a certain way is either because they're fearful. Okay, if you take something I have, then I'll have less. Right, and I believe the wealthy pit us against each other to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You got the trillionaires looking down and making us fight for scraps. The second thing is
empire wins when the people feuds.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have this idea that look, if there's something that the other man feels entitled to that I believe belongs to me, then unfortunately we might have to have a competition.
Yeah.
Right? If I say, hey Keys, man, this is my girlfriend. I just met her today, and you don't know this woman, then it's okay. But if I bring in a woman that you are interested in, then there's a competition, right? And so when I think about things like reparations, stuff like that, I think about the fact that I'm asking, we're in the unfortunate position, in the losing position of asking white America to let go of something that they truly feel entitled to.
Yeah.
Like if I show up and I can document to you, you stole $14 trillion in wealth from us, you owe us land, you owe us cash, you owe us all these other things, and they say, no, that's my stuff. I know my great-grandfather did this, but that's my stuff. You a damn fool if you think they're going to just give it to you.
Well, the problem is the negotiation in the first place.
Yeah.
If you're negotiating with somebody on what you think you're owed, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you are already giving up the position. You're invalidating what you owed in the first place by allowing somebody else's opinion to be entered into something that's already factual, right? And so when you look at people that do get things, they're not looking at what you think about it. Here's what we want, right? This is how much we owe. This is how much we go get. This is a system in which we're going to set up to make sure that we get that done. There's no argument about it, right? We don't need to have any consensus. The opinion on whether people care about reparations, none of that matters. Mm-hmm. Here's a fact of a debt that is owed. This is what we're owed for damages that have been incurred for this very specific reason, and this is how we're going to collect, right? Nothing else needs to be stated. When you want something from us, and this is the tactic in negotiation and where we give up leverage, especially if we're going to talk about voting, you can't expect to ask for something after, right? You actually have to get it before, right? I was in a space, a white guy was talking about how people try to negotiate for things afterwards. He gave up a good story. He said it was outside the stadium, and I think the Knicks or somebody was playing, and they were saying that they wanted to get 4 tickets. And there was this guy that was out there, and he was like, man, $20,000. In the fourth quarter, y'all can get 4 tickets. You understand me? And they was excited and be like, yeah, we'll pay you, right? And then they told the guy, look, we ain't got that in cash. We'll get you understand me, the next day, we got you. Like, they excited, so they said yes to this price with every inclination to pay the guy. They wasn't trying to fool him. They went and watched the game, enjoyed the hell out the game. And then this guy calls them about a week later, and it's like, what's up with that $20,000? Now they're in a completely different space.
Yeesh.
Hell, oh no, we want to really give this guy $20,000 for them tickets?
Yeah.
Beforehand, if he would have made them pay, if he would have forced them to, they would have done it, and they would have been happy. They would have had the experience and never thought about it. Yep. The key to that is, you get what you want beforehand.
Yes. Right?
The value of your leverage diminishes after the favor is done, right? But people in that space will do anything for you before it's done. You can get what you want because you are holding the leverage, but you're succeeded when you're giving it away. And so we are oftentimes, it's like, no, you have lied to us for too many times. Sign this paperwork first. This is what we want. Then we'll give you this. It's like if you got all black people in America to vote independent, it's like putting the vote into escrow, right? And we saying that here's our demands. Who's going to meet these demands?
Man, I've been saying that for years. And what happens is you when you say that, that's when the propaganda machine kicks in. That's when it's Dr. Boyce is MAGA, or or you get the scary stories. If the Republicans take over, it's gonna be your fault and it's gonna be terrible. They're gonna kill us all, whatever, right? And it's very frustrating because what you just said is precisely how every negotiation book tells you to operate, because you're dealing with that concept of moral hazard that says, once I give you power, it's gonna be hard for me to reel it back in. It's just like
you can't reel it back in.
Yeah, it's like when a girl meets a guy and he's gonna be real nice to you for a certain reason.
You give him the cookie,
right? As soon as you get,
I already know what it tastes like now.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Your negotiation power out the window, baby.
There you go. Exactly.
You want him to buy the bag after the cookie? No, before you take him to the cookie shop, take him to the bag store.
Exactly. You have to do that. And I think that what you said about putting the vote in escrow.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's a simple concept.
Yeah.
And it's a simple game. We've played the other game, right? And we've trusted it time and time over and over again. So it's not even an anti-voting stance. It's not an anti-nothing stance. We're saying that, look, here's the lessons from last time.
Yep.
Here's the way we think we're going to do it this time, right? And the problem is that the same rhetoric continues to increase. But you have a new political class and a new political consciousness that I think is existing in this country, to where you have the Mamdanis of the world, the Pikers of the world on the Democratic side, and you have these people that even the Democrats are not even adjusting to, right? And so they don't want to go independent because the independent ticket doesn't have enough power, enough identity and resources behind it. So they co-opt the Democratic ticket the same way Donald Trump turned the Republican thing into the MAGA thing, but it was a co-opting of the Republican Party. But they're not Republicans, they're MAGA, which is a distinction that you have to understand when you're talking about the new political classes. You have MAGA, you have Republicans, you have Democrats, then you got far left and far right and moderate and all these other different, it's just a lot of stuff, right? Yeah. But the point of it is that the simplification of it is that we tried the lesser of two evils, right? And the idea is we got evil, which is what we were buying in the first place.
Well, the funny thing about it that bothers me is Malcolm was talking about this 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So for us to, if anyone says, well, we learned this now in 2026.
Oh, no. All these things have been already talked about and adjudicated in the court of black consciousness in the liberation movement.
Yeah, and I think that people who understand that, you got to stick to your guns and just know you're going to get a lot of hate from the community. I remember, when Ice Cube was doing his thing, he had talked to somebody and he was telling me what the conversation was. It was somebody in the Democratic Party about what he wanted for black people. And I said, what did he say? He said, well, they'll work on it after the election. And me and him both laughed because, Cube is not a stupid man. We both were raised by men, so we understand, like, that's a sucker move. Like the idea that I'll give this to you after you give me what I want, that's crazy. Yeah. So really, the reason that black people are not respected in the political process is because they know that we don't negotiate logically. Just the idea that they would even say something like that to him, like, oh, we'll look into it after the election, that's disrespectful, because that's me literally thinking that you are naive enough to fall for that.
Well, they have the data as well. So that's the one thing that we have to understand is they have the data on where the popular vote is going to go, the dominant amount of people. And in order for that scenario to change, there has to be a shift in public influence. So what they did is they then looked at the blue shift and the red shift. They looked at the podcast and they mapped that out. And they said, this is how we can shift influence over here by going through these influencers and things of that nature. Yeah. The other side did not have a really good strategy. Today, I'm seeing them with a better strategy, but they're late, right? And that lateness have cost them too much power. And the question that becomes, if you think these people are that evil, how come you're not willing to do anything radical to stop them?
Right.
That was the question on people's mind. It's almost like you're telling me that this monster could end the world, but you're not willing to shoot the monster. Yeah. You're not willing to get the people straps. You're not willing to goddamn fund me. I'm trying to understand, like, the threat that you're saying is posed is not adding up to your willingness to oppose it, right? So that's where that disconnection and that dissonance was happening with the people. Now, listen, my brother, it's been a great, incredible conversation having you here.
Yeah.
I look forward to working with you on some projects in the future.
Yeah.
Right? We have a lot of things coming up, and we can talk about some of these off camera, but I wanted to have to sit down, and I've been following you for a long time, just seeing your consistency. I think the hardest thing to have today is consistency. Anybody can pop up, right? And a lot of people fall down. But the consistent man is the one who gets my respect, right? To show up every single day for something you believe in. Not only that, to navigate the rough seas, to be able to make money from it. You have an incredible background of somebody who comes from the scholastic side of things and transitioning that very well in the social media space, right? But also just in mainstream media as well. I think that should be studied, right? Whether somebody like you or not, the articulation and understanding of your pathway, right? Which I believe is legitimate in the way that you've cornered your market and understanding, especially on the back front where you have, or the forefront where you have these new like financial influencers and shows and podcasts, and you got all these new ways that they're teaching, but here you are consistent with your Black business school, and the people that you are affecting and helping, they know that. Right, and I talk to people all the time. We had this journalist who was this investigative journalist who came over, and he was investigating me on some stuff. But and hope, inshallah, it's a positive review. But
Right.
but one of the things was that I told him is that before you think about getting rid of people, right, running pieces on people and things of that nature, think about, can you replace what they do for people? Everybody has a different role in people's lives. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has one of my favorite analogies, and he talks about the role of the sun. And the role of the sun, it sheds light on a lot of people. But then the role of the stars are to light places that the sun cannot reach, right, in the rest of the universe. And although we may be suns in our areas thinking we're shedding light on things and we're shining and we're doing what we're supposed to do, you can't destroy the rest of the stars because you leave everybody else in darkness, right? They might not be doing it the way you like. You might even have justifiable criticism sometime, right? But are you really thinking about the impact and the positive impact that they're having in people's lives? How much does that really matter to you? Because there's somebody who's able to take care of their family because of you, right? Now, if that Black man then did something of a criminal element, or Black woman, everybody is on them. Why you ain't just do this? Why you ain't learn that? Right? But here you are interceding in people's lives and being a light. So I have to continue to shed light on other people who are light bearers and bringers in this world, because I can't do the role by myself, and I shouldn't even try to. Together, there's a universe. Each one teach one, each one correct one, each one respect one, right? And then we form these networks and we coordinate with each other so that we can do better, right, and grow. And I think the evolution of the community to become an economic force is the maturity of the leaders coming together and connecting together and making sure that there's infrastructure behind the influence, right, and behind the good intentions, right? Because a road to good intentions, as they say, you understand me, is the road to hell. It paves the road to hell. So I just want to say thank you, brother, for being a doctor to many, right? And you do have a real doctorate, right?
Yes. Yes. The Ohio State University, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you as well, brother. And you were very hospitable. You and I had not talked since we went to King Randall School.
Yes, sir. How many years ago was that?
That was probably 3 years ago. And I watch you as well from afar, man. And so I flew to LA to meet you. And it's and from the time, and I'm gonna tell you the truth, man, you don't know. You just don't know how people feel about whatever. And so I came in not knowing what to expect one way or the other, and you and your team made me feel very much at home. And I appreciate that, and I hope to do the same for you when you come to Chicago, man.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Let's do some great things.
Peace to the family. It's been your high-level conversation. Make sure you're having your own.
19 keys, and this is high-level conversation. Tap in with the guy. It's 19 keys. The execution of knowledge is power.
From a boy to a man, and ultimately back into the natural state of being, into a God.